for Adidas and 510 says we are the best in the world. The advocacy director for Quality Bicycle Products, that's a national bike parts wholesaler, says we are the most progressive in the nation. The popularity and success of this bike park has been proven over the last 8 years because of its heartbeat and its soul. Bike industry is filming segments here. They're taking pictures with their athletes and they're making edits. We see over 50,000 visitors a year from all over the world. Truckee Bike Park benefits all of Truckee as well as the whole airport district boundaries on a daily basis. TBP benefits 90% of this region. Besides tourism, we benefit all ages, all skill, all kinds of bikes, even adaptive athletes. Kids and grandkids starting as young as 2 years old are learning to live and enjoy a healthy lifestyle here. Lifelong lessons of facing, planning, and overcoming fears are learned. Real-life trigonometry, the relative theory of motion, are a daily part of TBP. The bike park is a leveler. There are no social classes, no race, no age limitations, just two wheels enjoying riding. A social dynamic is introduced. I'm 46. I ride and hang out with kids from here, younger than me, older, and we just all learn from each other and hang out. The bike park gets kids in the outdoors, off of screens, the computers. Kids in the city are having problems and they're losing their depth perception from excessive screen time. We do our part to prevent this. The accessibility and ease of riding a bike is friendly there. A family of 3 kids can all have different and separate challenges. Also, if a young child has a meltdown, we are only minutes from the car. If they are out on a trail, it could be miles. Right now, we have the bike park with its 8 acres is like a 16-hole golf course. A 3 1/4 aspect airport runway. So we're looking to complete the vision. We have 2 more short pitch bike trails left, a black and green slopestyle trail, and this will complete a rider's skill set and prepare them for anything that they will encounter on their riding travels. We expect and have an estimated $150,000 to complete the capital improvement plan. So Court and I have volunteered the last almost 9 years and given our hearts and souls. We have been compromising our lives, our days off, and I know this is a labor of love, but we are asking you if you can to help us and please fund the whole $75,000 so we can finish the bike park. I do have another ask. With using the top tier of builders, they are highly sought after. We have them reserved for May 1, and I know you guys all have busy schedules and I bet a ton of stuff on your agenda, but if there was any way that you guys could come with a decision of any help to the bike park for March so we can book our builders and so we can have them start May 1, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for your consideration and all that you've done for us.
Thank you, Brooks.
Thank you guys.
How are you going to get this done if we don't give you all the 75? Where do you get the rest of the money?
Different fundraisers. We have a matching up to $20K for our Bar of America event. So if we raise $20K, they'll match. We have annual sponsorship steel signs out there that is a portion. For the last 2 years, we've had a full-time grant writer. We also go down to Sea Otter and put most of the bike industry in a headlock and hold them upside down and see if we can get any money. The Bank of Brooks has never been maxed before. So whatever we can do.
You guys have done a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I forget, do we do public comment first or we talk about it first? I'm filling in for Teresa.
Yeah, it's kind of up to you if you want to have any clarifying questions from Brooks, or if you want to take public comment and then deliberate, it's fine.
Okay. Are there other questions for Brooks?
I don't have anything, so I'll just say I thought the Brooks and his team and the staff did a great job on the package, so my questions, any questions that I might have had are answered in the package, so thank you and thank you.
You know, my only other question, and what I wave every time I'm up here, is all this other property tax money that's up here. Like at the hospital, they get about $7 million as well. And this is health oriented, or school district, or, you know, and Rec Park is contributing. I'm all about multi-agency, everybody jumping in. So you've partnered with Rec Park, but there's other agencies as well that, you know, I'm reaching out. The other question I had was, in terms of the visitors, you say 50,000 visitors. Do you kind of keep a survey in terms of how many are Nevada and Placer County people, you know, local versus, you know, visitors? And I hear about this advertised on radios in Sacramento, so I know there's other people coming in.
Well, there definitely is. Yeah.
But I'm just curious.
On a daily basis, I would
Yeah.
say the majority is Nevada and Placer, but in the summer months, we see it from all over.
So you don't really keep tabs on that, because
No.
it would be hard to do. I just was curious, because that is our district. Okay. No other questions? Is there public comment? Okay. Well, thank you for the,
I'll just make a comment. I think it's an amazing amenity that our town has. It's one that's done at a really kind of world-class level, which is unique for Truckee. And I think we live in a world-class place. We should have world-class amenities, and I'm a huge fan of it. I think it gets people outside, and it really does run the gamut of all ages and all backgrounds. And I know that there's a lot of agencies that would love to say, hey, why don't you guys donate to this too? But it's something really special. And I think you've done a really good job of noticing us and our previous donations there. When you walk into the bike park, there's signage and information about the airport.
well, part of my blindness is to
I get
say,
it.
go talk to them too.
I've knocked on the hospital's door before, and I'm not doing the right knock or something.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for
Thank you,
presenting.
guys.
And
Thank you for your time
all right.
and consideration.
Okay. No, there was no public comment, so now we'll move on to tab 5, the Town of Truckee and map for the Downtown Pocket Park Agency Partnership Request. It's erroneously listed as TDRPD, but it's not, it's Town of Truckee.
Yeah, this is another agency partnership request on behalf of Mountain Area Preservation. Alexis Aller, the executive director, is here, and many of us know Alexis really well. And the airport's done work with MAP in the past on a number of different levels. This is a $50,000 request. No action will be taken tonight. Again, further action in March or April meeting timeframe. And the sponsoring agency for this request would be the Town of Truckee.
Thank you, everyone. Alexis Aller, Executive Director of Mountain Area Preservation. And as Hardy said, this is really building upon Phase 1. So I think in the agenda it said Phase 1. This is Phase 2. So we do have a pocket park there, and I'll kind of run through that. So Mountain Area Preservation, we're an environmental advocacy group. I thought I'd just do a quick intro. We've been around since 1987, so for 32 years, our work is really focused on the preservation of open space and advocating for smart growth development. So why did MAP get into the business of a pocket park? Well, it was outlined in the 1997 downtown specific plan, and MAP, our board and our first executive director, Caitlin Bachlan, started on this path in 2008. So our project goals were really a water quality improvement project. Trout Creek is a tributary of the Truckee River, important drinking water, as many of us know. The site was very degraded. It was used for snow storage. We said it was a snert site, which is snow and dirt, and all of the lovely things that come with snow and dirt and runoff and debris. So it was really, in some ways, an environmental disaster, if you remember what the site looked like, and I'll get into some photos, not previous photos, but of what we accomplished. So we helped restore water quality. We helped create a community benefit project. It really is community benefit environmental stewardship by creating a gathering space, a pocket park. It's town right of way, so it is a very small space. We also have interpretive panels to educate locals and visitors and students on the flora and fauna. We have a beautiful watershed illustration, a watershed map. And then we've also started to create some programs from the site, stewardship and education. So we feel that we've been very successful. It was a long road of planning with the town of Truckee, environmental assessments with the floodplain, but it's been collaborative between planning and environmental analysis and permitting. It was a big haul for maps. So what you're looking at here are a couple of photos. We have a solar light. This was the first solar light installed in the town of Truckee. The Truckee Donner PUD helped with that. We have a beautiful art bike rack that we worked with the artists on to really mimic some Truckee history with railroad ties and spikes. Permeable pavers. We have a stormwater filtration system. We are the only little park site in Truckee with ADA tables, and that was important because we wanted this park to be accessible by all, not to just be a resource for specific user groups. So we really put a lot of intention and planning into that, and then of course our stormwater improvements. We have a beautiful kiosk. On the front side is our interpretive panel on the flora, on fauna. We also inherited a Washoe grinding stone. When the Pocket Park was in construction, so was Brickletown, and a grinding stone was found, and the Washoe tribe would have rather relocated the grinding stone to the Pocket Park, so we worked with the tribe on creating an interpretive panel for that to really also embrace our indigenous history of this area and explain that to park users. And then we have native and drought tolerant plants at the park. I also want to mention on the back side of the interpretive kiosk, we have one other additional panel really highlighting sustainable sites. So that's important because the park was created with low impact development methods and looking at sustainability to educate people on what community-wise and sustainable design looks like. So we have that, and we also have space for our last interpretive panel, which will conclude with phase 2, which will highlight all of the funding to date. So we've been holding off on doing that interpretive panel with phase 2, but that will highlight all the grants in the Friends of Trout Creek. Here is also a photo of the path that connects to the Trout Creek Trail. So if you haven't experienced the Trout Creek Trail, it's awesome. It goes from Tahoe Donner into historic downtown Truckee, Class 1 paved trail. So our project really helps to connect to that in creating that connectivity. As I said, it's a community gathering space. We see people out there using it, the site in the morning. We're also seeing student groups because we've started an education program, which I'll talk a little bit about. It adds to the beautification of downtown. And then, of course, an additional facet is additional paid parking, which I think many of us know is very important for downtown as we're underparked. So that was a very important component for the town of Truckee, which we were happy to help with. So the park has really been, like I said, a collaborative effort between MAP and the town. In 2018, we launched our first pilot program for education, and this is important to our organization because we are a land use advocacy group, and land use is complicated, so we've started land use literacy. We also teach students about sustainable design, watershed restoration, and environmental ethics. So we've now grown our program from second and third graders. We started with one school, and now we have expanded to 4 schools. So the park has now become an outdoor classroom, which is important. We have done stewardship days for the last 4 years, and I was saying to Hardy that we did receive funding from the airport district last year for our stewardship days, so thank you. That helped us spend about $1,000 on new plants, ground cover, bulbs, some trees. The park gets, last winter the park got pretty hammered with snow, so we needed a lot more plants. And so we've been really excited to partner with the town on that. Vail Epic Promise is also one of our grant partners. And so every year we do multiple stewardship days, not only with students, but with other groups looking for service learning and place-based learning. So stewardship days are fun, great way to get out of the office as well. So where are we now? We're at phase 2. I was saying to some people in the audience that in the process of constructing the pocket park, it was sort of a planning oversight. The pocket park receives really intense solar aspect, which is great for a solar light, but not good for the intense summer months. And so during construction, we started the process of communicating with the town about what phase 2 would look like, which of course is not really fun to do when you're in the midst of phase 1. And so in 2017, we started identifying planning and engineering grants. We received a grant from Tykert Foundation in 2018 to help facilitate funding for the engineering of a shade structure. We worked with Ryan Group Architects on the design of the shade structure, and it's very simple. There's really nothing flashy to it because we're not trying to add anything too large to the site. We're really trying to minimize the site disturbance at the park, but the biggest thing is to enhance this community benefit project to increase use of the site and also encourage additional recreation and enhance our outdoor classroom now that we've grown the program. So these are a couple of renderings. There was a photo of the kiosk. The fabricated steel is the same steel on the kiosk. It has that rustic brown look. You can't get away without doing something rustic in downtown Truckee. So it's really simple design. It's been engineered for the snow loads and snow shed with the town standards in mind, and again, really minimizing the site disturbance, but providing that enhancement and shade specifically over the 2 ADA picnic tables. So where we are in our timeline, we have the engineering all done, completed. We've been sort of doing that check with the town of Truckee. The town did their resolution last month so that we could apply for the agency partnership funding for the airport district. We're now in the process of presenting to the district here and also doing our HPAC, our Historic Preservation Advisory Committee application, and that's really to just make sure that it's consistent with everything that happens in historic downtown Truckee with materials. And if successful with funding, specifically to the request for the airport as well as HPAC, we would like to apply for an encroachment permit from the town in March. We're working with Prosser Building and Development. They've provided the construction estimate for the project. We would like to then enter into an agreement and schedule fabrication and installation with a goal of completing everything by July. And ideally, we would also like to have sort of our final Pocket Park is done party in July as well. So that will be a nice big ribbon for MAP and the community and all of the supporters to date. So fun, I put this in our application. So far, we have received over $600,000 in grants and sponsorships and donations, public and private. This illustrates the different funding partners to date. So we've been, it's a long road. I think the one thing I've realized, our parks are not easy to fund. We need them, but they're difficult. There's very few specific grants for them, and I think the community support has been phenomenal for us, specifically with the agency partnership support with the town of Truckee, especially because it's been outlined in their downtown specific plan. So this sort of outlines that commitment, and then we also have 30 other donors that have submitted, have contributed to the success of the project. this is a nitty gritty on the project budget, so I won't go into detail, but we've got demolition, concrete, the shade structure, fabrication, and then the project manager site cleanup. So the total project cost is $95,610. To date in 2019 and so far this year, we've secured $46,000 for the project, so that leaves a gap of $50,000. Our request to the airport district is for $50,000 for this project. So we're looking at really the airport district to help us sort of, like I said, tie the bow off on this project, be done with it, and really further enhance this community benefit for downtown Truckee, for the district, for Placer, Nevada County, town, and of course visitors and future youth groups. So again, we've been very successful in our quest of the pocket park, and now we really want to further enhance it for the district and visitors and youth groups, and we really hope that the district could support us in that request. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Is there other questions from the board? Okay.
I have a question. Where did you get your $46,000?
The $46,000, we have one grant from Union Pacific, we have another grant from the Walter and Elise Fund, and then we have another $20,000 in donor contributions.
And to be repetitive,
Yes, yes, and I was here last month, Mary, and I heard you loud and clear, and the only door I haven't knocked on is the hospital. So I will knock on that door. I just had a meeting with them not too long ago about the general plan update, just about, what's happening, because we're the environmental representative for the general plan update. So I'll be happy to knock on that door. And if Rick's gonna say, what do you do if the district doesn't give you the money? Are you gonna say that?
Stop reading my mind. I'm not gonna ask that.
So what we would do, because we have exhausted our grants, there's, like I said, it's, there's not a ton of grants specifically geared for parks. We've even gone, last year we went after AARP because they do have, we fund parks, but I think because, it's a pocket park, it's small scale, we're just not as attractive in the bigger scheme of national granting for that. So our next step would be capital campaign to raise the additional $50,000 through our donors, and then I would go knock on the hospital's door, and hopefully someone comes to the door, but I don't know that they will. So
What I was going to say is commend you on the work you did for the first 600,000 for phase one. You raised that from a lot of people.
yes,
So good job.
yeah. Well, I appreciate that. When I first started, the past executive director, and this has been important for MAP because we work on land use advocacy and we work behind the scenes, and this is tangible. And so I thought, oh, this is great, I can do this. And I quickly realized, oh, there's a reason why this has taken so long. But I was persistent and was passed like a hot potato between planners. I think I worked with 7 different planners in 4 years. But we're persistent and committed. And again, this is really not about MAP. This is about giving back to the community and doing something for our watershed, but also providing public benefit.
is there a phase 3 or is that?
No. We've got some bigger fish to fry, but
Okay.
but this is really this is the finale,
Okay.
you might say. So
All right. Well, thank you for
Thank you.
your presentation. Is there a public comment?
Check. Good evening, Lee Golden, 6 years with ACAT, and I've been involved with volunteer community work for 20 years out in Glenshire. And for the last 12 years of that, MAP has been extremely helpful and professional, providing information for various projects that we've been involved with. Their attention to detail is absolutely exemplary, and their generosity to help is, I've never seen such generosity in people that are so willing to help. The door is always open. They're totally professional with this, and I've learned so much from these folks. And they're contribution to the community for these things. It's really, really amazing. So I hope that you'll consider that in your decision on this. They do just fantastic work here in the community. It's much appreciated from me and from other folks too. So thank you very much. And thank you very much to MAP for what they're doing here. Appreciate it.
Is there other public comment? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to tab 6, the alternate runway design option.
Thank you. So the purpose of this agenda item tonight is to review a request from Director Hetherington and then David Diamond to consider and discuss the merits of an alternate runway proposal that was originally planned for and considered during our master plan process that started late 2013 and went until 2015. This proposed third runway, when we looked at it back in around that time, it would be roughly a runway 1634. To give you kind of the heading alignment that we think it would be about 6,300 feet long, 100 feet wide. And originally it was looked at to see if there were some noise and annoyance benefits that could be realized to some affected neighborhoods. The proposal during the master plan was ultimately dismissed due to the cost, and we think it could be anywhere from 18 to 25 million. It could be more than that. When we looked at it in 2014-15, there was also some concern that it would have difficulty at that time meeting the FAA's funding criteria to receive Airport Improvement Program funds. So that was one of the main reasons it's been dismissed. I will say that in the 6 years since we reviewed that, and that's the last time it had gone through any kind of a review, things have changed. There's actually a new advisory circular, it's 5313A, Chapter 3 is the one that deals with runway design. That's been revised since then. I don't think significantly, but there's been revisions to it that we have not compared this proposal to. So I wanted to give time to Mary and David Diamond, who is also on our ACAT, but this is not an official ACAT project. I just want to make sure everybody knows. And they'll give you a little presentation about what they're requesting. And ultimately, I think what would come out of this, what the request is tonight, from a staff perspective, is we didn't, because it had been dismissed as part of the master plan, we did not want to launch in a staff endeavor to reevaluate this unless that was the desire of the board of directors. And what we think that review would be, if the board was inclined to relook at this, is probably $5,000 to $7,000 of some engineering review by our planning consultant, Mead and Hunt. And then what I would like to do, if there is interest, is go meet with, there's 3 people at the San Francisco Airport District Office and actually show it to them and talk to them about it and where this would fall into eligibility. And there's 2 eligibility categories. One is, will you let us build it? And the second one is, will you fund it? And asking those questions to those folks and then coming back with some answers. So that's the request, but I'll let David and Mary give any additional insight on that.
I'll let David take it because, this was...
Hi, I'm David Diamond. I authored the suggestion for this, so I just wanted to kind of give you my perspective on it. When I first started drafting that, I wasn't even aware that the airport had previously looked at a concept like that. This is that general concept of the additional runway. It came from me originally because I was trying to figure out ways in which we could get pilots to diversify with regard to the runways that they use typically in calm wind conditions. There's a parade of airplanes that goes off 29 that's fairly common, and then I find that even in calm wind situations, people tend to continue to use 29. And for different types of aircraft, they have to do certain things, and we don't have that alternative. For smaller piston aircraft, there are basically 4 alternatives when the wind is calm up here. So I started thinking about that as a means for reducing noise and annoyance for the communities that live off the approach ends of those runways. And then I started thinking more in terms of, like, if there was something that we could do to take advantage of that giant space of nothing that's out there, where, like I was thinking, particularly like early morning jet traffic departures that are taking off out at 29, if they were somehow aligned out just this side of Boca Hill, that they're really affecting so few people by comparison to their departures off of 29. And when we think of wind conditions, aircraft like that are less sensitive to wind, so even if there was a little bit of a tailwind component or a crosswind component, that it wouldn't affect them as much as it would affect those of us flying super small aircraft. Hardy was helpful in bringing me up to speed on what had happened in the past, and we looked at the wind report. And in fact, the wind report that we looked at said that Truckee is overwhelmingly under calm wind conditions by a large percentage. And when the wind is kicking, it's favoring 2-0 coming this way. So there weren't that many, assuming that wind report was accurate, there weren't that many situations where 29 was actually the best runway option that we had. Again, aircraft types notwithstanding. So the other consideration when I started thinking about the alignment of here was not only just those departures, we have some better alignment with the existing instrument approaches that we've got now, that we might be able to preclude a circle to land approach if we had an approach that was coming right into the southbound runway from that, which would be kind of an advantage there. We would have a traffic pattern, well, I'll just stay here.
There's this one here too.
Yeah, I mean, you could just see if you're flying north, if the traffic pattern is taking off and it's left pattern, that you can see that a lot of the traffic.
There's a laser pointer right there. Would you like us to put up the bigger map that?
Yeah, that works. Thanks. Thanks for all that. We're like saying that over and over again, and I was just ignoring you.
But you want the community map up there with the wider scale?
The bigger one like this?
No, for right now, I think this is okay. We can look at that in a second. But so if for aircraft that are departing that are doing traffic pattern procedures, you can see that for a lot of the traffic pattern that they're in, they're actually not overflying homes, or they're not overflying near as many homes as the pattern that comes off here into 29. So there was another advantage there. And let me see, I had a note there, something else that I knew that I would defer. Oh, we're in ACAT, we're working, I'll talk about this in the next ACAT presentation, but we're working on an emergency landing map, an area, a survey that has been done of the area of what likely alternate, like if an engine goes out, what does that particular terrain in that area look like, and what does it look like in this area and this area, so that pilots can make informed decisions when they're departing Truckee about, if my engine goes out, if I need to put the airplane down, where are my best options. Again, that's a different thing, but this runway also nicely aligns with all of the spots that have been found to be the most hospitable to an off-airport landing for aircraft departing there. So that, and the other big issue about this as we got more into it was just the fact that if we were to diversify departures where we could have some departures going off here and some departures going off there, this runway continues, 202 continues to be active. If we can diversify the departures that take off out of Truckee in the course of a day, we reduce the annoyance over specific communities, so that they, like the people that live off the departure end of 29, don't feel like they're bearing the brunt of this, and that the residents of Glenshire up here aren't as inconvenienced by traffic that has to come in to runway 20 because it's coming in over this way off of Boca Hill. So when I was thinking about all that stuff, I talked to Hardy about it. This is when I found out about the board or previous board had already considered. We did look into why it was an issue. Some folks had said wind, some folks had said money. Money is definitely a concern for this. But what I'm asking at this point in time is if the board could at least allow staff to see if anything has changed, if it would be a better alternative for us now. On so many different angles, we do what we can for noise abatement. And I fear that we are getting to the point where we're having to be ultra creative about it. The low-hanging fruit is long gone. And I would just like to, if there's that one last thing that we could do that could help the community out, even if it's an expensive cost item, if we can figure out how to make it work, I'd just like the board to consider it. And given what we're doing with ADSB, the installation of ADSB, now would be the time to talk about this, because if we're going to be creating new procedures and such, we should know that there's going to be a runway or a different runway to be considered there. And that is, yeah, those were all the points that I wanted to make on it.
Great. Yeah, he and I have been talking about this, and we walked the road the other day, and I guess you and Hardy flew this
Yeah,
direction.
that's right.
the other
Forgot
day,
about that.
Just to see what it would be like, and, it seems like it's worth the effort, because, like you say, we've searched and searched, and so I'm curious if the board has questions for. David has been the driver on this, and I think it's ingenious.
I heard about the issue from you before I was elected. Can I go back to the map of the runway? That one. My impression is this is a real problem with the FAA. You can't have this like this, and you'd have to pull this back someplace like here. I don't know if this is a problem. Is this a problem?
That's what we want to find out.
Well, I have not gone into any level of detail of re-reviewing that same FAA advisory circular that does that. So I guess before I would start saying what has problems and what doesn't, there's obviously issues with how that's laid out, and I think Mead and Hunt, they're here. This is a very preliminary, just what would fit on the land. I mean, no one should get too into the geometry of it all. But that's what we would have to go back and do, and what we would spend that money on is trying to figure out where are there conflicts with that advisory circular, where is it compliant, and then we would go meet with the FAA and talk about it. But you couldn't build it just like that. There definitely would need to be some modifications or changes to some of the taxi lanes, maybe displaced thresholds, things like that, but that's what we have to dive into and see.
Yeah, we did, just to follow up on what Mary had said, Hardy and I did go out and fly patterns and fictitious approaches to this runway, and one of the huge benefits of the northbound runway is terrain is absolutely not a concern. So even for lesser performing aircraft, there's just nothing that you have to climb about. Going off that way, exactly, yeah. And we also did an approach coming in from the lake, so a straight in for the potential runway 34, which nicely, if you look over at the terrain over here, there's like a dip in the terrain, and that actually just comes right through the dip there. So it's actually, you can get a more stabilized approach into 3-4 without having to jump over terrain than on 2-9 currently coming in over the lake. So there was an advantage there. And again, this is all certain aircraft. We were in a Cirrus SR-20 that doesn't like to slow down and go down at the same time. So Hardy said that it was a little bit awkward in that approach. In aircraft like my 182, it would be absolutely no problem. The airplane would go down happily in that situation. And we also do have still, down in this area here, we have a visual approach that's coming in for 2-9 right now, and it would be nicely lined up with runway 34. So it kind of just seems like, even with the existing instrument stuff that we've got now, this kind of helps that situation a little bit. And it felt weird for us because we felt like we were flying in areas we're not supposed to fly, like we were getting away with something. We're not supposed to be here right now. But as far as the actual pattern and the way that it was flown, it didn't seem there was nothing about it that was scarier or seemed more dangerous than patterns we've got right now. And for the vast majority of it, we're not overflying homes.
Other questions?
Yeah. How would you land on this runway if you were in a larger airplane, like a jet specifically?
It would depend on the approach that they were coming in over, whether what we were talking about with the SR-20, whether they could get to a stabilized approach without getting too low over the terrain there. My guess on that would be any aircraft that was coming in on the visual approach down here and going for 2.9 would likely be able to do that. It's actually, on both sides, it's actually surprising how hospitable the terrain is for I mean, unless you were in.
Basically come over the top of North Star.
Absolutely, yeah.
And just go right over North Star.
Right.
And straight into this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And if you had a powerful enough airplane, if you were taking off 1.6, in theory, you could do that straight out, take a minor left turn to go over Brockway and get out to the lake without overflying downtown to come back around. So again, so much of it will depend on the aircraft, the type of aircraft, the performance of the aircraft, and whether the pilot feels confident doing like when we just discussed departures off 1-1. Departures off 1-1 for me are awesome. I love them. And departures off 1-1 for other aircraft and other pilots are a no-go because there's terrain issues and they don't want to worry about out climbing the terrain. So I just think it's another option, and I would just ask the board to at least let staff do the research to see where we're at now with the funding that we have now, the difference between that and back then, and whether or not there's any changes, as they were talking about, with regard to the FAA regulations that would actually make it possible. And if the whole thing turns out to be something we can't do, I would at least like to be able to explain to the community that we actually went to this extent to try to diversify flight paths to reduce annoyance for those specific communities, in case they're wondering.
At the total cost of?
Yeah, under our master service agreement, we would probably spend $5,000 to $7,000 just looking at this and comparing it with the airport design criteria in the advisory circular.
And would that also give you like some comparison to the prevailing winds and the?
We'd be able to look at that too.
Be able to get
Yeah.
traffic to use this runway, and the fact that you'd have to taxi a lot farther and the winds would be not as good as they would be on this other runway?
Primarily, we would look
Most of
at
the time.
the advisory circular, and in that advisory circular, there's a lot of stuff about wind. And that's one of the factors that the FAA looks at, maybe the most important factor they look at when they consider whether or not they're going to fund runways.
I mean, if it's, in my opinion, if it's truly $5,000 to $7,000 and we could get a really reasonable, just gut check on the idea, I think that the value to the community of, hey, here's something we looked at, here's something we looked at really hard in the master plan. I mean, I think Mary and I spent time on this years ago, and we spent a considerable amount of time even since then looking at 2.0 and making 2.0 longer and wider, and could we get more people to use that? And I guess if that study just further influences this, I mean, what did the master plan cost?
It was about $100,000.
Yeah, so it's a small amount of money in comparison to that much larger project. But I would be apprehensive to spend a lot of money on this study. So that's why I'm sort of showing what's the total
It's more of buying
cost.
their brains that deal with designs and helping us get some bullets that we could then compare and then have some things we could review with the FAA.
Yeah.
So they would be preparing a formal study, but we'd essentially have a memo.
And I love the fact if we're going to find new information, new ideas out of it, then it's $5,000 really well spent.
Yeah.
Clearly, we don't have any great ideas of how to cut down on noise and annoyance that are new low-hanging fruit.
When, sorry.
Go ahead.
So I agree with, also just to say, I agree with pursuing the idea, and I agree with everything you've said too about a cap and what we can achieve with it, at least for this next feasibility step. I remember a lot of conversations in evaluating different phases of the master plan, coming to the end of it. And I'm summarizing a lot, but saying that there was a point where we came up with two of many, but two main directions that we could take. One, maybe could be summarized by saying we pursue the combination of the tower, surveillance tower, so guidance to pilots going in and out, surveillance, that's the ADSB, along with procedures, right? So that was one strategy, which in and of itself is plenty expensive, right? We're gonna be many millions of dollars in to get that implemented. And evaluating that against the idea of the runway. And we had also different discussions about different lengthening runways, as you were just saying, and reconfiguring runways or an alternative runway. And even though this first one that I just reminded us all about, the tower, ADSB and procedures, was expensive, the runway, the new runway, was many, many, many more times as expensive. So just to say, why did we pursue, again, I'm summarizing, but why did we pursue one course of action and not the runway at the time? But I think what we've learned is there's going to be some gains in noise and annoyance and safety, some gains in both from the tower ADSB procedures method, but maybe not the amount of gains that we were hoping we would get. And so it does seem like, I agree, a good time to pursue at a $5,000 to $7,000 cost, another level of feasibility.
I agree, pursuit, but I also want to see, we've spent, I don't know, do you consider $1 million for ADSB low-hanging fruit? That's a little higher than low, and I'd like to get that going. It is going to happen here really soon, correct, Hardy? That's a yes. And I'd like to see how it works, see what the results are. We don't, we want to find out.
The other thing, like you and I worked on it, it was, at that time, we were getting about $3 to $4 million in property taxes, and now we're getting $7 million in property taxes. So that bite is a little different than it was. Just for fun, I was pulling up old data. The change in powered aircraft from '05 was about 10,000 powered aircraft, and this year in 18 it was 29,500. And the projections are we're just going to get more and more powered aircraft. And the idea of how can we spread it around. This runway obviously won't work in certain conditions for certain aircraft. But if we can, we all enjoy the benefits of people coming here, we should all share in the costs of people coming here via aircraft. And this is definitely an option that could address that, mixing it up. When it goes out or coming in, it would come in, it's a straight in more or less from truck 4 intersection as compared to a circle to land or a left downwind. And that's a big benefit for aircraft. It also comes in or takes off over the bug station and Prosser Lake. So just to geographically put that in your mind. Lastly, I talked to Teresa Odette, the only one I talked to about it besides Dave, and she's in favor of it as well.
Meeting.
Tonight, I talked to her before the meeting, she was.
And she's in favor of the next
doing
step.
a study,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just wanted to pass that along. Hi, Teresa. She said she was going to be watching. So those were the other things to consider. So, no more questions for you?
No more questions for me? Thank you.
Okay, then is there public comment? And if there is public comment, we're going to take like 3 minutes per person.
Hi, my name is Ken Aronson, and I'm a pilot and aircraft owner at Truckee Airport. I don't believe this runway would be beneficial. I have several reasons. Some of them Kevin already has kind of told us about. The taxiways are going to be very confusing, several hotspots, 3 runways. 1 runway is very good for an airport, 2 is pretty good for conflicting with weather reports. 3 is just going to be more confusing. There's going to be threshold issues. You're going to be crossing 2 runways, runway 20, runway 29. I don't know if it's going to help that much with noise. We can take off on runway 20. Well, 2 is one of the preferred runways I take off on. You can turn left immediately after taking off and go to the bug station. So I don't think you need to have a straight out. You just make that left turn. Landing on 1/6 of this new runway, if you have to do a go-around, I believe you'd probably fly right into North Star. There's rising terrain right there. I don't think taking off on 1/6 would be beneficial. There's rising terrain. At North Star, you'll probably have complaints from the Ritz-Carlton that's right there. I would rather see runway 2 or 20 be extended to the freeway. That's about 1,000 feet. more jets would be able to use that then. You might be able to go over the freeway, put the freeway into a tunnel. They've done that at other airports. And I just want to keep the airport as simple as possible. And if you do the study, which would be fine, do a study, maybe add in there about extending runway 2 and what would the benefits be for either one. This is very, very expensive, unless the FAA pays for it. But I believe if we could extend runway 2, we already have most of the runway done. We could extend it and maybe would take care of 30% of the noise problems just by extending that one runway, and most of the problems would go away. So I would request, if you do the study, also have them look into what improvements you could get by extending runway 20, and the cost to do that, and compare the two costs. Thank you very much.
Lee Golden, ACAT. I'm going to be flying the F-90-1. It's a King Air the next few days, and I will get with the tower here, and if we can work it out, I will shoot an approach visually in the aircraft to the hypothetical touchdown zone with safety in mind and tower agreement for runway 34. I've done base entries for 29. Left traffic coming in from over yonder, Squaw and further out that way. And there is some terrain considerations, but I'll happily do that, safety allowing in the tower, and then I can report back and tell you my experiences with it. The King Air is a moderately high performance airplane. The approach speeds are a little less than some of the jets, but still basically to fly a safe pattern around here in that airplane, 140 knots is minimum speed. So I'm happy to do that, and if and when I can do this, maybe in the next week or two, I'll get back with staff and get some information just from my experiences with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. My name is Tom Meadows. The board considered this idea 6 years ago, and it would have cost $18 to $25 million. Today, it would probably cost $30 million. And by the time that first shovel of dirt was turned, it could easily be $35 million. Here's a quote from Agenda Item 6. The purpose of the proposal is to consider the possibility that this new runway could reduce noise annoyance for affected neighborhoods around the airport. When considering this proposed runway, consider that you would have to be willing to spend $35-ish million of FAA money to move some noise from one area to another. From alternate runway consideration, page 4, about displacing runway 20 threshold, quote, the threshold will additionally ensure that arriving aircraft for 20 remain at higher altitudes while near Glenshire. Runway 20's threshold was displaced several years ago as a safety measure to help pilots land long, thus being a bit higher when we encounter wind shear on very short final, and that was a safety action to displace that runway. How much higher will aircraft be over Glenshire? I assume that everyone on the board is familiar with the inverse square law of sound propagation. No eyes lit up. Which is, quote, the law by which the mean square varies inversely as the square of the distance from the source. The general rule of thumb is that under ideal conditions, no reflecting surfaces or other background sound or interference, a sound level drops 6 dB for every doubling of the distance from the source, unquote. How much increase in altitude do you have to have a significant reduction in noise? Think about that. How much increase in a displaced threshold do you need to get that altitude or that difference? Now, looking at the map, that map, there goes the glider port. That runway comes smack dab right through the glider ports and campground and all of the land that takes destroys the glider port. This is Truckee Tahoe Airport glider port is one of the 2 premier glider ports in the nation. The other is Minden.
Okay,
And I don't know why anybody would consider sand over trees, but that's okay.
okay.
Hey,
We're
well-
trying to hold people to 3 minutes, so can you get to the
Well, you
end?
started me at a minute and a half or 2 minutes, a minute 43.
It was 3.
Okay,
They're
I-
monitoring it. So
Okay,
you
let me
wanna
have
finish?
another sentence. And then it won't be about bluebirds. My friend Bob Cooey, who I really like, one of his favorite sayings was, "A job not worth doing is a job not worth doing well." I do not support this idea.
Hi, my name is Linda Russin. I'm in the Sierra Meadows area, and I was very happy to hear the board express some support for just analyzing this for a mere $5,000, which I think I've spent many times over in property taxes. I believe this is of great value to the community to show that a sincere effort is being made and not just speculating about all of the things that I think they're all really good points, but let's put it to rest. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
We apologize for the buzzers. You have a little more time. It's a new timer we're figuring out, so.
I have your time.
Okay. Is there other public comment?
Hi there, Peter Morris. I'm in the approach pattern on North Star. I see that as a rifle aimed at North Star. Sorry. The shallow contour that is being spoken of, that is North Star, I believe. So you're talking about taking the end of the runway, putting it 1,000 to 1,500 feet closer to North Star, and you're still trying to get down to that same level. You're landing at the same elevation, which means you're flying lower and lower over North Star, trying to hit the end of that new runway. I see that as a lose. The gentleman made the suggestion of spending the money to extend 2.0. In that case, the planes would be coming in over, let's see, that's Lahontan and Martis Camp. The biggest problem in noise is the jets. It's their jets. Let them enjoy it. I see that as a lose. The complications of how the runways interact is problematic, and one other point that I just need to ask is I'm not sure. I've been told that this runway and its proximity to this building prohibit large commercial aircraft from coming in and out of this airport. Is that correct?
I agree. The map, but
Yeah.
That's one of the criteria, that because of the proximity of that airport or that runway to this building, there is a prohibition against, Southwest Airlines bringing in some jets. That proposed alignment seems to eliminate that problem. So is this actually an end run to increase commercial air traffic in and out of this small, regional, personal, private little airport that we're supposed to have here? Because the airplanes have just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and louder. So I just see that as increasing the problem, not helping. Thanks.
Okay, is there more public comment? Okay,
Could we make additional
Yeah.
comments, or is that, yeah? So I think thanks to everyone for the public comments. I think some good questions were raised, echoing some of the things that you raised too, Jim, and that David also raised. And I'm thinking of, if we still want to go ahead with the report, with the study, this short-term, low-dollar study, one of the things I think we could try to do is capture what are some of the questions that were raised here today. There's additional questions that weren't raised, and in a simple sort of FAQ format, we could try to get those addressed. They're good, they're many good points, whether I agree or disagree with them. They're good points, and we should find some ways to answer them, I would suggest.
Okay. Do you have any more comments, more questions?
Well, I'm still sort of support doing the study, although I have my doubts whether this airport can do anything for $5,000.
Jim, do you have anything?
I don't have any comments, other than maybe touche, but I think that we just, in a really short, I don't know how many people are here to make those comments because it was on the agenda or just heard about it tonight and made those comments, but we got a really broad array of comments, and I think that whatever we do to change things at the airport, we're going to do that. If anything, that makes me want to do the study more. I think there's a lot of obstacles here and a lot of negatives, but I think to your point, for the price, maybe we can learn something. Maybe it informs us on how we can do something better. And I think that's what, for the most part, everybody in this room, whether they want to fly loud or fly quiet, or they don't want to see anyone fly at all, we all kind of are after the same goal.
The only other thing is, having worked on that master plan, and it was talked about lengthening 220. And we got pushback because the FAA is not wanting aircraft overflying highways. But the idea of extending it and of extending it with a tunnel, I mean, do we want to take this study to that other level? I'm just throwing it out because it was brought up.
Yeah, I
I
think I'd much rather have really quiet airplanes flying around without disrupting the sort of serenity of that valley in terms of taking over your view corridor and turning it into like a Chicago O'Hare type experience with a tunnel going under an airport. I guess that's what I see in my mind. I know that's extreme, but I'd just be careful to
it's just that if we're meeting with the FAA to look at options, is it an appropriate thing to also be looking at 220 more specifically? Because we didn't talk to the FAA, it was just yes, it might be more than 5,000 to 7,000 then if we're opening the door to look at that
It
option.
depends on the scope. If you're gonna start talking about costs, when the scope changes, that's when the cost goes up. But
Yeah.
the master plan, I've got a fancy pointer here.
It doesn't have to be a one and done either. I think
No.
what we could
Yeah.
do is we could do this, and then we could take that $5,000 spend. Kevin can come back and say he only spent $49.50, and then we can,
or $69.50.
or $69.50, and then we could sort of iterate on it, and we could use it to continue a conversation without just scoping out, like, go out and spend $100,000 and figure it out.
That's what I'm getting at, is what I'm asking for. The funding I put in the staff report is essentially to have a runway design expert look at this and look at the criteria. That's what we're doing. There's a lot of stuff that we don't need a consultant to tell us. We're also airport professionals. I know how to read those manuals. And we'll do a lot of, we'll do some work in that area too, be able to come back with, some ideas of where we think this would go. It won't go anywhere if the FAA doesn't approve it. And so, that's where I would hate for us to spend a lot of time and energy, here locally thinking about this concept, only to find out that even if we funded it ourselves, they won't let us build it. And that's really the question that we have to answer.
Yeah, that's the first question. So what I'm hearing is not any mood to look at 220 at this point.
Well, I would love to. I'd love to do it without blowing out I'd love to. If Kevin can say, "What do you think about this? What's the feeling on that?" Without turning it into a $25,000 scope.
I guess what I'm looking at is if we're going to go to talk to the FAA about this option versus that option, you got to have some drawings, you got to have some bullet points, you have to have the citations out of that one, AC, I got as far as AC. And we don't have that expertise. That's what Mead and Hunt does, they're design people. And so, because they would be addressing the wind, the type of aircraft, the design criteria. So I'm just saying, yes, that would increase the scope, that would increase the cost. Is that something to look at? Because it distributes it. Again, it's, we have different types of aircraft, what pistons can do, what jets can do, what different neighborhoods are feeling the overflights of different aircraft.
Yeah, I'm going to say that I think, I did say this many years ago when we were looking at the master plan and the alternative of extending that runway. I don't think the community would tolerate the extension over the freeway, over 267. I don't think, it doesn't matter, honestly.
Okay.
I'm one person, right? The community would tolerate that.
Yeah,
Were you really
That was
talking about
good.
extending this over 267?
there's some good discussion about that, yes.
Holy mackerel, didn't we just do a restoration up there?
Yeah, the master plan does have a 500-foot extension that's approved right here and a widening to 100 feet from the 75. That was one of the things. And when we say approved, the FAA doesn't really approve things. They say things like, we are not opposed to you doing that. And so, there's even questions if that's FAA eligible. That they would let us build ourselves, but they wouldn't fund because our airport design code says we don't need a 100-foot runway there. But if we wanted to expand it, they would let us.
I think we should end the discussion to a large degree and say, we want you to spend $1,650 max and come back with like all of Hardy's ideas about how approach and departure procedures would work, just in totally rough terms, and come back with some concrete stuff that you work on from Mead and Hunt, and just give us a conversation.
The other piece that we're recommending here is that we would do that and then we'd go meet with the FAA and then come back. That's what I'd like to do. I'd like to go down and meet with Fernando and Barry and Doug and all our friends down there and show them what we're talking about and find out what they tell us.
Okay. Direction to
And
staff.
anyone that wants to come can come. Within reason. I can take a couple people with me, so.
Okay. The Super T hangar.
So, the purpose of the agenda item tonight is, this agenda item is to receive a presentation and consider the findings and recommendations of the Super T-Hanger study. The 2019 budget included some funding for us to go out and look at and do, consider the feasibility of financial pro forma, and then essentially a needs assessment on building another row of what I've been affectionately calling super duper T-hangers, because they're larger than the current 11 super T-hangers we have now. So there's quite a bit of stuff in this presentation. I'd like to have Mead and Hunt, provide a report to the board. In the staff report also, there's some staff analysis that we completed on the impact to the wait times and also budget and programming. So we can talk about how this project would affect our wait lists. There's a lot of data in the staff report on that. And the last thing is I also did put some analysis in here on some of the big ticket items we've been talking about for the last couple of years, and how some of these projects that we're talking about tonight, there's a few other things out there that are 7 digits that we've been also talking about, and so we can just keep that in mind as we're looking over those things. So I think next is to hear a presentation from Mead and Hunt. This is not an action item, it's guidance, to get some guidance from the board as to where you want to take this next, but with that, I'll let Brad and Mitch provide their presentation.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Brad Buzinski, Mead and Hunt. Thanks for having us put this project together. This is actually an enjoyable study for us. We also did the executive hangar study, and I think a few of you were on the board for that. I say exciting because it's nice to do something that you see from concept to completion, which we did with the executive hangars. So unlike looking at runways that may or may not be built 50 years from now, now that's on my brain, yeah. So this is just an overview of the report and what we're going to go over tonight. I'm going to take you from point A to point B, which is really looking at how we looked at your wait list, coming up with the hangar size that we wanted to evaluate, the cost estimates on it, and then I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Mitch Hooper, who's going to really get into the meat of the study, which is the market rent and the pro forma analysis. I think it's important that, as your consultants, we're not taking a position on this. This is for the board and management to consider whether or not you want to build hangars or not. We're not advocating a position for you to build or not. When Kevin called me a few months ago, the idea was, the wait list is getting clogged up again. The ALP is showing hangars beyond the executive rows that were built in the last couple of years. And what can we do to alleviate the wait list? And the first aircraft that came to mind was the PC-12. That was our original focus on this. And the reason for that was there was about 11 or 12 on your wait list, tenants or potential tenants that own PC-12s. However, it was also communicated that we really want to stick to T hangars at this time. You had just constructed executive hangars, and I know Kevin uses the term super duper T hangars. It's a size that we're looking at that is unique to this airport. You have a lot of T hangars that have doors that are 45 feet and below. You also have some that are in between 45 and 55, but not, if any, that are up to 60. So we looked at a national hangar manufacturer. It's a design off the shelf. It's this N72-60 first. What that means is it's a 60-foot wide front. It's a 59.5-foot door. And the 72, they're nested T hangars, so 72 is the width of the completed row. Started looking at this, it's great, the PC-12 wingspan fits, however, the tail doesn't. The PC-12 is too long. So back to the drawing board, we considered a custom T hanger, specifically designed for the PC-12, which would just extend that tail box and some of the wing box. We had a hard time getting calls back from manufacturers on even a proposal. It's come to us when you're serious about building these. That was a red flag for us with this study because we thought we wanted to give you the most accurate costs, and we weren't sure that we'd be able to do that with that custom. The other option was box hangars. However, at the onset of this study, it was a T hanger study. The box hangars you were just built, and the idea was we want to maximize the space that's rented for the aircraft. My point being that, again, there's this unique size of T hanger that you don't have here, where you could fit more on a footprint than a box hanger. So we decided to move ahead with this N72-60, and all this is your wait list. The point I'm making here is everything that's highlighted in blue could fit into this new super hangar. The other thing that I want to note, so now you can see that the PC-12 does not fit. However, with the addition of these new hangar sizes that is unique to Truckee, there's a possibility that you could shuffle tenants around. There's some smaller aircraft in the executive hangars that could fit in these proposed hangars, therefore moving some of the larger aircraft off this list into those executive hangars. We are always conscious of operations here and how the community and the board views that. And I think the easy answer here is that you build hangars, your operations are going to go up. However, two things on that. We put together that demand driver study back in 2015, and the primary driver of your operations is the economy. It's the economy, it's the economy, it's the economy. The other thing that I noticed was when I was looking back at your master plan forecast and your operations since 2013, I noticed a very big swing between 2012 and 2017. And then things have sort of leveled, I mean, they're still growing, but they've sort of leveled off since 2017, and that's when you built the executive hangars. So I know it's a small sample size, but the correlation between the two, at least in the short term, is not there. It's also to note that most of the users on the wait list are already operating here. Repositioning is a common event, which just adds to operations today. This is just a conceptual site plan. This is this is revised from the ALP, but pretty much the same footprint. I think we have 2 rows on the ALP, but they're shorter. This, we wanted to keep this swale here for drainage. This is the conceptual storm drain, which really mimics this design here. I believe this is the cutoff where it drains to the north and west, and then everything here drains to the south. But this is the site plan that we use for our quantities. And this is just another conceptual plan and profile. Six hangars on each side, 12 total, 390 feet. We have the long gabled roof, so that snow falls off to the sides, to the short sides, and 1 bathroom on the north end. The costs that we came up with, we had 2 primary sources on the costs. One was a national hangar manufacturer. They gave us a very detailed estimate for the building itself, building foundation, erection, steel, and that's this 2.8 that we have here. The other source that we had was, we looked at your as-builts from the executive hangars, looked at those unit costs, adjusted those for 2019. I say 2019, this was done in December, and came up with these costs here. So roughly 5.3 million for this site and the building, and all the bells and whistles associated with it. We ran this by airport staff, and I think Peter looked at it as well, and gave his blessing on it. The pavement costs, and these are every 5 or 10 or 20 years, the pavement and maintenance costs. The pavement costs, again, we got from your quantities and units from the executive hangar row. The maintenance costs we got from your staff on some similar hangar rows here. And then we reached out to AMCG, and I know they're doing a concurrent study with this to look at all your hangars, but what started was they were going to look at Super T hangars. And Mitch, I'm going to hand this over to Mitch now, and he's going to give a brief summary on this and then get into the pro formas. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Good evening, Mitch Hooper, Mead and Hunt. So I'm going to talk about the rent study that Aviation Management Consulting Group, or AMCG, prepared, and then get into the results of the pro forma analysis. One of the primary reasons that we looked at this for the pro forma is we didn't want to go into a pro forma with the existing rental rate if that was not appropriate. And when I say not appropriate, some of the things that need to be considered here are that these are brand new construction. You look at some of the other hangars that are being rented, they're from the 60s, the 70s, they're much older, they serve a different purpose. There's also a very high level of demand, and I'll get into how this is all possibly going to be paid for. It's a lot of money out of your pocket no matter what. So the intent was you wanted to make sure that you were collecting as much as the market would bear to recoup your investment as compensating you for providing the service to your users. So what AMCG did is they looked at different airports across the country. They also looked at comparable resort destination airports. And rather than just picking a rental rate that one of the either competitor airports or an airport halfway across the country is charging, they took all of the rent into consideration and came up with a recommendation based on the characteristics of the construction, of the users that you're serving, and the rents that you're already charging. And so at the bottom there, your current rent per square foot per month is 0.3979, and the recommendation was to raise that about 30% or so to 0.5278. And so we took that rate into some of our scenarios for the pro forma. So before I go over the pro forma summary, and I can go into as much or as little detail as people have patience for tonight, but essentially, we looked at the way that these would be funded, whether you would go out for a bond to pay for some or half of it, or if you would pay for all of it in cash up front. And so in those scenarios, the financing scenarios, there's also a bond payment that has to be considered here. And then we looked at different lease rates, either using your existing lease rate, using a lease rate that we call cost recovery, which that's over the 40-year life of the investment. The net present value of all cash flows is 0, so you make your money back at the end of the day, or using that market lease rate. And so the summary here shows 5 scenarios that we ran that are in the report that you have all read. We've also, since we've delivered that report, there were some questions that came that made us think of a few different scenarios that we may want to tweak this. And the way we've set up this model, it's pretty easy for us to really change any of these variables around on our assumptions. But at the end of the day, the result is no one's going to become rich building super T hangars. That's really not what they're intended for. They're protecting assets. It's a service that you're providing the flying public that is also purchasing fuel and services when they're here, and contributing to the economics of the community. So it's more than just the finances here, but looking at them just on the face, with your current rental rate, the net present value of all cash flows, once you account for the cost of maintaining and operating the T hangars in addition to the construction, is about a negative $1.7 million. So your internal rate of return is negative. At the cost recovery, at your break even, that's obviously zero. And to do that, you would have to charge $0.5273 per square foot per month. Then we have the two bond financing scenarios where you're borrowing 50% of the cost or you're borrowing 100% of the cost, and then you pay that back over the course of 20 years. Now the pro formas are 40 years, so you would be done paying off the loan halfway through, and then you would be recouping the rent still for another 20 years. However, those were the worst performing ones because now you're paying interest on the money versus money that you have. Granted, that assumes that you have $5.3 million sitting around to just spend on these, so that's something to factor in. And then the last is the market rate that AMCG provided. So it's a little bit higher than your cost recovery rate, so you do turn a slight profit, just under $100,000 over a course of a 40-year investment. And your IRR, or internal rate of return, is 1.08. So with that, happy to entertain any questions. I know there were some, so either Brad or I would happy to talk through them, or Kevin, if you wanted to add anything.
I think Rick has a question.
Yeah.
No, I have statements.
Statements, all right.
One, I think your rent recommendation at $1,140 is low. And, we had this situation for the executive hangars where staff recommended $2,500 a month, and the board approved building them at $2,800 a month. And due to the superior skill of our manager of hangar leasing, we got them fully leased up at $2,800. Thank you, Jill. My big concern is that we don't cannibalize the executive hangars by building these and leaving some of them empty. So that would be something I'd be nervous about. I would want to pre-lease them before we pulled the trigger. I'd like to charge something like $1,400 a month. I'd like to look specifically, me personally, look at a 50% or approximately 50% debt situation so that the rent would cover the debt service plus the cost of maintaining the hangars, so that we aren't having to feed them like we're feeding the executive hangars, because we financed 100% and on a 20-year basis we can't cover our debt service. So let me see what else. Higher rent, pre-leasing, borrow half roughly. I could support something like that.
Would you like me to comment on that? We talked about that earlier today.
We did look a little at just a rough order magnitude scenario with some additional market considerations and loan. It gets to Rick's point, maybe it would be good to just quickly mention those.
So, and that, the reason it's not up here is because that scenario came to us after we had submitted the report to everybody, but when we do a final here, we'll include it. But using $1,400 a month per unit, and then using the guidance of making sure that however much is borrowed, you can cover that in the $1,400 a month. That puts you at about 52% bond. The rent per square foot, just to put it in context with some of these others, would be about 0.6481, so 61 cents a square foot a month. And then your net present value on that would be just over $800,000 over the 40-year investment. So again, same 20-year period, and then after that.
Let me inform you that the rent per square foot doesn't help me at all.
Okay.
Month.
Yep.
How much a month?
$1,400 a month, as you said.
Thank you.
Yes. But yeah, to put it in context, it is higher than any of these scenarios as you requested.
hurdle rate of return on that last?
On that last one, 1.8. Your hurdle rate is 1%. That's the cost of capital we used.
I was just curious, why not considering bond financing with cost recovery or with market rate? You know, I mean, the bond financing that you did was at the current rate. And, you know, that seems, why would we do that? We would do bond financing and we'd want to charge more.
Sure.
So
And
why did we not do that?
so on those ones, those are other scenarios that we also ran after the fact. They still produce a negative net present value, but obviously perform better than the ones that are presented here. So when we revise the report, we'll have those included as well, so you can see how those play out. They're not breaking you even by any sense, but they are better because the rent is higher.
Okay, there was something about an IRAR, the market rate that you had, scenario 5, on page 26, that assumes this is the best case with a 6.3 vacancy, 6.3% vacancy. So just being aware of the vacancy issue. I'm curious, at one point earlier, you said something about there's smaller aircraft currently in the executive hangars? And I'm just curious about that because my understanding was that we had to build those because we had demand from big aircraft.
Yeah, we have qualifying aircraft, but the aircraft that are in there are smaller, but they still don't fit in any other hangar except an executive hangar. Meaning we could move a Malibu or a TBM or something like that that needs an exec hangar. We have a few T hangars that those will fit in, and some of those do have them in there. But we have a qualifying aircraft that has to fit those exec hangars. But some of those could move to these Super Ts and then backfill those with other aircraft on the wait list. But we don't let people put a small, like a Cessna, in those exec hangars, even though we have requests, and I've taken some heat for that.
I think Rick's point about cannibalizing them is of concern. I agree. That's a good term. So page 8, 9, these would not fit a PC-12, correct?
That's correct.
Correct, okay. The cost estimate, when you increased the cost for site work and all that, you escalated costs from 2017? You didn't just use the cost that we used from the exec?
We escalated that to $2019, correct? Yes.
Okay. And then that one minor error in the pro forma
And
that I brought to your attention.
I updated that, and it pretty much makes them all about $200,000 worse off.
It's not significant, but it was an error.
Yeah, we will
in
have
the
that
pro
corrected
forma.
when we revise.
Yeah. And existing rate, I just ran, looking at 376,981 would be the cost, and that the market rate, market rate would bring in 155, so there's 221 missing that basically we would be covering out of our reserve.
Yes.
Our reserve is essentially property tax dollars, and so we have to be kind of aware of that.
Yep.
And as someone who's hopeful and optimistic that we might be able to put in this third runway, I'm kind of holding I want to keep my pot ready in case I need to. AMCG on page 1, they had a last paragraph. It is noteworthy that the rental rates currently being charged at the airport were not included in the national, regional, comparable resort destination or competitive market rates, but were utilized as a point of reference to derive the opinion of market rent conveyed in this summary report. I don't understand what that means.
And I would have to ask AMCG to get to the exact bottom of that, but my guess is they didn't want to change the average by including yours in the sample that they have, because it's on the lower side of some of the ones they were looking at. But that's me
And that
stretching.
ties into, I brought out, because I'm a pack rat, where I keep all these old information points, about 2010 or 11, we did an internal review on how much we were charging on hangar rents, and this was Truckee base rate at the time, and there were all these up here. And talking to Teresa today, again, because since she couldn't make it, she had some comments that she wanted, and she is absolutely, how did she put that? She is not willing to do this at such a low price. So, and that's, when I look at this, and I look at what people are paying at Grass Valley, Watsonville, Reed, Hillview, Hollister, South County, and we're just barely above mean and median.
So,
And
Mayor, what year is that?
2010 and 11.
Yeah, so when
It
we
was
did the exec
internally
hanger
done.
study, we
Jane
did it
these.
again.
What?
When we did the exec hanger study,
Yeah.
we did that again.
Okay.
And so our numbers are higher than what it was in 2010.
So
And-
are we more in this range
Well,
now?
I've got it here. I mean, that's something, actually Hardy and I were talking about, we can update that again. We update that about every 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And we can look at that, but
Because again, who are we comparing ourselves
Yes,
to
and-
for their market rent?
and I will
As-
also-
As I've mentioned to you, our airport is our airport, and that's what AMCG always says, and we are Truckee. We're not the diner, and we need to be cognizant when we're setting those rates.
the other thing that we're doing is, while AMCG was doing this survey, we went ahead and had them just survey all of our hangars. And there is a more comprehensive T-hanger and exec hanger survey that's coming out, and we should have it here in another month.
Okay.
We got the first draft of it about a week ago, and we're just going through some of the detail. But the initial results of that is our exec hangers are higher than market, and some of our T-hangers are, some are lower, some are right with market.
Okay.
And again, market is something we might have to have a whole work session on how to define.
That would be great.
But it's something that, from a staff perspective, we think about often, so.
Okay. Also on the AMCG, and I'm putting you on the,
That's fine.
You know,
That's why I'm here.
and I'm just looking at where they talk about the key underlining assumptions, and they talk about modified gross lease rates, by definition, occur when the lessor, that's us, pays for a portion of maintenance, utilities, insurance, and taxes associated with the subject property. So are they not including those fees within, when they're talking about rates?
I will have to inquire with them about that.
Okay. And in fact, AMCG, in their market study, they had the maximum one site, and I don't know what it is, for this type hangar was 2,574. So, and they came up with 1140. So there's that disparate of
Yes.
what's right. So those are the comments from Teresa and some of mine.
Okay,
So,
I'll relay those. Thank you.
thank you.
How many hangars do we have on the wait list? For all types?
You'll need to come to, sorry. Sorry.
So currently, right now, if you combine the executive wait list and the T-hanger wait list, there's 104 individuals. on the wait list.
104.
But that's if
104.
you're combined, if you're.
Yeah.
So that's like, I ask this question every other board meeting, and I think it was 98, 99, 101, 103, 104. Would it be fair to say it's generally rising?
Yes. As
Okay, and-
fast as I can get somebody in a hangar, there seems to be somebody adding to the wait list.
How many T-hangers and how many executives?
So we have,
Currently.
currently, we have 197 T-hangers, ranging in all sizes, from 36 and a half foot door widths up to the 11 that we have that are in the 48 foot plus, and we have 30 executive hangars.
And how many are on the wait list for the Ts, and how many are on the wait list for the executives?
There's 60 on the wait list for the Ts and 44 on the wait list for the executives.
Okay, so just look at that picture. We have 197 Ts, and we have 60 people waiting to get into there. We have 30 executives, and we have 44 waiting to get in there. I'm just trying to color your question, which is a fantastic question of, are we going to cannibalize the list of the 44 people going into the 30 executives? I hope so. A little bit, because we have too many people waiting to get in a hangar for too many years, and I think we have a responsibility running an airport to address that situation. I'm not saying we should address it at great loss to the airport, or we should subsidize the hangars, or we should make a bad investment in it. $5 million for a metal building, that's a lot of money, and it's hard. It's going to be hard to stomach. But let's look at the long-term return of it beyond the 20 years. If we're paying off a
40
loan for
years.
20 years,
40
let's look
years.
at the 40-year picture.
40.
And let's wonder what happens after that. These hangars that we're in, I mean, can you give us a rundown of years of?
Yeah, I have it's up next to my desk, but it starts in the late 60s and it goes till last year.
Yeah, when were like the Lima Row hangars built? 20 years ago?
Lima was 2004.
2003. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
L&M.
17 years ago. They feel pretty new to me. I guess the point I'm trying to make is we have a huge hangar wait list. We could address it by building more box hangars, which are bigger and more expensive, and we can charge more money for. But we probably build a better pro forma with the super duper Ts. And I'd just like to dig into what's the best way to do this? I think there's a lot of questions of what's the best way to finance it, how much to borrow, does it make sense, is there a better way to do it? Those are great questions. But I'm nervous to say, oh, we don't need these.
Wasn't saying that, Jim.
I didn't insinuate you were.
I just wanted to get more rent for them.
Yeah, I got it. I'm just trying to address some of your concerns with that picture. I think it's important for us to know that there's 44 people on a wait list for 30 hangars.
And
So some of what we were talking about earlier is that there are people in the executive hangars that have a qualifying aircraft that would fit into these, thereby opening up the larger executives for some of the PC-12s, which wouldn't accommodate these. So there's a mix of not just the 44 on the executives, some people on the T hangar wait list that are waiting for the very limited Super Ts that we do have would be taken off the list as well.
Yep. Which I get. I think, I hope everyone on the board gets that. It feels like we would create another option to move things around, and we would really maximize our ability to take care of our customers.
And to build on what you were saying is, I would want to make sure we have working aircraft and people who are ready to sign and move in day one. I was very disturbed that we had hangars that weren't, one hangar that wasn't even filled for a year, and we were carrying it on debt service.
No, we had them all, they were all collecting rent. All of those hangars were collecting rent from when we occupied them, when they were done, until we put them in. We had people that didn't have an aircraft because we had that 12-month waiting policy, but we were able to fill them with other tenants.
Could I make some comments? So, a lot of times when we're considering big projects, we talk about what could be a set of next steps without, for example, committing all the way to construction. So I like that approach on considering these super duper T hangars. I think I probably with some sideboards, if we can agree to some sideboards, probably I would agree to some next steps for considering this. A couple comments I want to say about the wait lists. We have wait lists, of course we have wait lists. There is a degree of softness in the wait lists, and it's very hard to assess what the softness in the wait lists are. It's common anytime there's wait lists. Marinas with boats is another place, right? So, and we know, particularly when people perceive, or the reality is, that there's a multi-year process to get, in this case, into a hangar. Sometimes it's into a slip in a marina, that they get on the wait list before they're actually able to fulfill their slot if it comes up. So it's hard. It's hard to assess what is the softness in a wait list, but it's there. The other variable, which Jill just articulated and we just all talked about, is when there's another option available, it's going to create a shift in the wait list because we're going to be able to move people around. And again, that's hard to assess how much softness that's going to create in the remainder of the wait list. So there is a risk for us. It's not as simple as we have this many people on the wait list, and if we built that many slots, all those 104 people are not going to move into a hangar. It's not that simple. So I feel compelled to articulate that. I agree with Teresa and I think Rick on looking at some different, and Mary on looking on some different versions of the pro formas with some different rent rates. And I thought Rick had some good ideas about if we get to the point of agreeing that we want to build the hangars, that there are some pretty high qualifications we can put on getting to approval. So I'm willing to consider it, but I think I think some of the ideas that have come up are good ones about putting some sideboards on it.
I just feel
I'm done.
feel compelled to respond to your compulsion of if we were to build 104 slots, not 104 people would come.
Or planes.
I don't think we're proposing that. I think that's 8.5 times more slots than we're proposing. We're proposing 12. So I think it's reasonable to come back to that and not say, oh yeah, that's right, we wouldn't get all those people. I don't think we probably would get 104 people to move into 104 new hangars. If you could do that, then Rick would probably be jumping up and down. I think 12, I guess I'm trying to speak for an aviation community here and think about those people that, yeah, they're putting their name on the wait list 10 years ago because they know it's going to take 10 years to get there. And I've had some disgruntled people talking to me about that.
Yeah, probably.
When we approved the executive hangars, Jill had them all leased in 1 month. And she'd get a call from me.
Right.
That's pre-leased. Because she'd get a call from me every week. How you doing? How you doing? I didn't call, I came and saw you. Because I knew I was going to take some abuse from certain board members if you didn't get those leased. And you had committed. Now, it took a while to get them in because of our policy, which we've changed, that you could have a commitment and not have a plane for 12 months. That isn't the case anymore. And I'm really a big thing about pre-leasing. And I also want to ask you, Kevin says you can lease these for $1,400 a month. Is that accurate?
I will do my best. If that's the price that the board sets, I will do my best at whatever you guys set, at least pre-lease them.
And the other thing, the data queen, I guess, I bring up, in the recession, turboprops dropped off 20% between 8 and 9. Jet 3s dropped off 50, 70%. Jet 4s dropped off 50%. Jet 5s are actually reducing, the big 50K, the number of ops on the big ones are way down comparative.
This is what happened in the last financial crisis.
Yeah, in the 08, between 08 and 09. So just kind of going in with that eyes wide open because we talk about that aspect of, because the Pistons, that dropped 50%, and we knew that at that time we were renting out T-hangars to anybody just to keep them filled. But the turboprops, jets all dropped as well in terms of the number of operations. So that awareness.
One thing I forgot to say, I appreciated, honestly, I can't remember if it was Mitch or Brad saying that, maybe it was Brad, that there's reasonable potential that by this set of 12 super duper Ts that we might build, there's a reasonable probability that a majority of those, if not all those, would be filled by people who are already here. So I think that's an important point. And it's a positive for us in understanding that, more hangars, more operations, but if the folks are already based here, that's a positive.
And you find that out by pre-leasing before you start digging foundations.
Okay, any other?
Just one other thing, I wanted to add this, I think the board's heard me say this before, but for the public or anyone watching is, some might look at this and go, how are hangars ever built? And, who would ever build a hangar, with these kind of numbers? And I think it is just important to note that most airports don't have what we have here. We own all of our hangars and we've built all the hangars, and the FAA allows us to control 100% of hangar construction at this airport because we don't have any private hangars, which is very uncommon in the industry. So most airports you go to, the hangars, particularly these larger ones, are built by individuals. People lease the land from the airport and then build their own hangar. Sometimes they'll build them and lease them to other people, and the airport holds a ground lease, and that's how most airports build hangars. So that is an option at our airport, but we've chosen that not to pursue that because it allows the airport to be able to meter and control the tempo of construction on the airfield. And there's a cost to that. There's also prevailing wage costs that we have to include into our cost estimates that other people do not. And we did make sure prevailing wage was included in this, and it does not help the internal rate of return when we put that in.
And the other aspect of that, just for anybody who's watching, is once we open the door to one person to build their own hangar, then anybody can come in and build their own hangar. And even AMCG at the PMCDs talked about it being the Wild West.
It is,
and so there is a big benefit for us to maintain control of the FBO and the airfield and the hangars. So for anybody interested, that is the reason why we wrestle with these
you never get
issues.
it back.
You will not get it
Once you
back.
let one person build a hangar that's not an airport-owned or built hangar, then that goes away forever.
Right.
So we've been able to maintain that.
So, any other thing from the board? Okay, opening it to public comment.
Thank you, Madam President, and my name is Tom Meadows. For the past 32 years, I have advocated and supported construction of buildings which are aviation-related, and I have opposed buildings of non-aviation uses. So I wholeheartedly support building these hangars. However you want to do it, go do it. The only thing that I ask is that you get started on the building a slant hangar that's going to go on Todd Arrow's old place over there. What do you call that, Kevin?
Well, hangar 2.
Hangar 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need that. We need that more than we need these, since we're going to lose another building that's on the airport in the next couple of 3 years. So, thank you. Have a good night. Oh, this is a job worth doing, so it's worth doing well. Thank you.
Is there more public comment?
Good evening. My name is Carl Thompson, and I also wholeheartedly support the building of T-hangars, the super T-hangars here. I'm on the wait list. I've been on the wait list for about 14 months, and in all honesty, I don't think that I agree that there is some soft. The wait list is soft, but at the same time, there is many individuals out there who don't get on the wait list because they think it's futile. I think that the report said that the wait list was 4 years on the T hangars and 7 years on the executive hangars, and tomorrow's not a given, and so that's a long time. And so I know for myself that I've been operating here at the airport here for about 5 years. I've been a tenant in the long-term parking for that period of time, and finally about 14 months ago, I said, what the hell, I'm going to go on the wait list and see how it works out. So I do think that if you build it, they will come. I know for myself, I'd be interested in signing a pre-lease today if it were an option for it. There we go. So anyways, I think that certainly you will have tenants for these hangars. I don't think that there necessarily will be an increase in operations. I know for myself, I will utilize the airport maybe marginally more than I do presently. One factor, though, I don't think has been addressed is the increased safety offered by hangars. We live in a cold climate here. I've been on that ramp early in the morning with frost on the wings and contaminated lift surfaces with my family waiting. Can we go yet? Can we go yet? Waiting for the sun to melt, the ice on the wings. So there's certainly a safety factor with it. And it would be much appreciated by myself and my family to have a hangar to be able to house the airplane in overnight. I think last year, actually, there was a Citation 10 on the ramp doing exactly a wheelie. So certainly snow is a concern here. And I do want to say I understand that the comments with regards to controlling the development out here at the airport. I have built hangars. I am a tenant, a ground lease tenant in Stockton. Built the hangar there. You certainly can provide lots of protections. I know that when I had built the hangar in Stockton, there were requirements. I had to build it by such time. There are standards that need to be met. 35-year lease, it reverts back to the airport. I think that a private developer could build it for less than what's being proposed here. And you might want to consider that just because you can, at the end of the lease, the improvements revert back to the airport, and there can be a significant benefit to having a private individual develop the hangar that then becomes property of the airport at the end of the lease. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the board? Any other public comment?
Hello again, I'm Linda. Just commenting again from the community standpoint is, I'm curious about if there is an overall general plan of meeting all the needs, like if, from what I understand, there's 200 people or 200 hangars, I think, being utilized, and there's 100 more on the wait list. And I'm just wondering, without knowing anything about this, are there a lot of people because it's a subsidized rate? Is it a great deal to get a hangar here? So is that why the wait list is so large?
Interesting.
Anyway, just a curiosity about that.
That's a subjective answer, but no, I think that there's a lot of people on the wait list because we only have 197 T hangars and 30 executive hangars. And there's just more people that want to park their plane in a hangar than hangars we have. The rate that we charge is debatable, whether that's high, low, or fair.
Well,
I would
I'm
like
just
to think
looking
that
at
it's
these
fair.
numbers and wondering why a business, and this is where I don't really understand how the airport operates if it's on a profit basis, but a 1% return would not be considered very good, even if it was operating in the black. So it's unclear to me why it wouldn't just be built. Like, this is all satisfying 12 of 100 people, so that's 8%. I mean, it's not a very big group. So I guess I'm just asking without really understanding, just, it's a lot of work and money for a small goal, the way I see it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Other public comment?
Just one thing. As far as the rents are concerned, which I don't understand, this
We
may be.
need your name.
My name is Brooke. I live in Sierra Meadows over here, but when you're talking about the rents that you were charging, whatever happened to supply and demand? I mean, could you not crank up the rents until it's beneficial to what you're trying to accomplish here? And then you may thin the herd a little, if I may. I'm missing that, and I'm a businessman. I don't understand.
We limit the supply. We've done a
We're just
fantastic
listening.
job of limiting
We're
the
just
supply.
listening.
Okay, that's all. I'm just, it seems like if you have a lot of people trying to get into someplace, I have some properties that I rent. When it's in high demand, the rent goes up. Seems like that would be beneficial to the board and the taxpayer. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Excuse me, did your revenues take into consideration property?
Is there any other public comment? Okay, then, everybody need a little 5-10 minute break? It's been 2 hours, or do we want to get through these reports?
Oh, a quick break would be great.
That would be, it doesn't
And I
take
just have a couple follow-up questions on the T hangar.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Well, I just want to make sure I understand what you want me to do next.
Oh, okay,
So,
let's,
I think what I'm hearing is, I think I have a good idea of that, but essentially, we were going to look at a couple of more pro formas based on some of the comments that we had. There's some question that we need to have AMCG answer in the rate study, and lots of interest in rates, and I'm going to have lots of information on that here in the next, for the next time we talk about it. But I think what we'll do is bring that information back at the March or April board meeting, and then we can figure out what's the next step after that.
that
All
makes
right.
sense.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect. That's all I
thank
need.
you.
Great.
Okay, just a 5-10-minute break.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Yes. Informing me as well.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. All right. We're going to go back into session. So now we're going to go back into session, and I'm asking people to settle down. And we're going to do the monthly ACAT report.
There's a gavel if you need to use it.
Okay, can I do the gavel?
Good job.
It's the monthly ACAT. Well, you know, what can I say?
Should I start?
Sure.
Okay,
You know,
David
talk
Diamond.
slow, I guess, because, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Because, you know.
the new chair of ACAT, so you get stuck with me for doing these reports. So, yeah, can we go to just the next slide here? Oh, right, I do. See, these things, I don't understand these things. Oh my God, that's brilliant. Okay, yeah, so this is our new, we chose a new chair and vice chair. So those are, Joe was right over there.
You're doing great, baby.
Right, thanks. Thanks, Joe. So our action items were the minutes and the selection of the chair and the vice chair, as I just said, and we had presentations about the 2019 financial report and the Q4 comms report. And we've got a few things that are brewing that we had updates about. One is the emergency landing map project. I mentioned this briefly before. The goal of this project was to identify areas near the airport that pilots might choose as suitable emergency landing locations for their aircraft, so that they might also choose runways that are safer for their types of aircraft. So we've had a lot of discussions about this. The project has been handed over to staff. They've got some drone footage of the area so that pilots can see what it looks like from the air. And they're taking some photographs on the ground so that people can see what the surface looks like, the size of the rocks, if there's a fence, if there's phone lines, that sort of thing. I was told today that the drone guy is on vacation, so it's on pause right now, but that they are actively getting that information together. And we've got the Safe Haven pilot project. This is Mark Covey is heading this now. The concept behind this, if you haven't heard about this before, it's analogous to Uber offering free rides on New Year's Eve to people who are impaired. The idea being that we don't want people to make bad decisions about their ability to get themselves places. And so when we thought about this with regard to pilots and aircraft, if the wind kicks up, if a storm is coming in and a pilot is not really ready to take on the weather conditions, or his aircraft is not suitable for it, that they might try to get out fast before things get bad because they don't want to get stuck in traffic, or in Truckee, they don't have a place to stay. They don't know what to do with their aircraft if it's a hailstorm that's coming, something like this. The concept here is that we get volunteers in the community who basically say, I've got a room, I will let somebody spend the night here so that they can reassess their situation in the morning. It's all volunteer based there, and that we also appeal to the tenants of the hangars, that if we have a situation where bad, potentially dangerous to aircraft weather is coming in, a hailstorm, something like this, or really bad snow, that staff can email the participating hangar tenants and say, we've got a pilot stuck here with a Cessna 210. Is anybody's hangar empty right now where we could park this 210 to wait out the storm? The theory being that between having a safe haven for the aircraft and a safe haven for the pilot, that the pilot might actually make the better decision to not go and just wait the storm out. So that's where that's at right now. Mark Covey is working on that. We're talking about the logistics of it, how it'll work. We don't want to take up too much staff time with it, so we want to make sure that we can get it, something that's fairly streamlined in its process. We also have this real estate guide. Real estate guide is kind of as it evolves, kind of a increasingly awkward term for this. The original idea for this was that we wanted to have a document that people coming into the Truckee area could read to understand exactly how the airport participates in the area, the good that the airport does, the impact that the airport has for overfly, where typical fly routes are. So because you come to the Truckee area and you kind of don't know the area, your realtor will say, you're buying property near an airport, and they'll say, oh, okay. But they might not fully understand how that whole thing works. So we wanted to kind of introduce the airport to prospective buyers in the Truckee area, and this has been extended to just residents in general. Coming in here just so that they understand how they can participate in the airport, the board meetings, the ACAT meetings, how the airport interfaces with the community, all the things that have gone on here, and just a general overview of this is how the airport works. The stage that this is at now is that Hardy has contacted the Tahoe Sierra Board of Realtors and told them that we're looking into this project, and so their government liaison will meet with us so that we can say what we have in mind and get feedback on that before we go too much further on it. And the scope of the project has scaled down from like just being a printed document to being like a trifold or a smaller format that's got a general map of the entire area, where things are, where airplanes fly, and where the board meetings are, and the whole, just like kind of understanding the airport. So that's where we're at with that right now. There will be updates on that after our meeting next week with ACAT. Oops, sorry. And then ACAT is also looking at the voluntary curfew, the fly quiet, hangar discount incentives, the idea being that we can make a recommendation of simplifying that program. It's difficult for a number of people, including myself, to understand. Often if I need to leave in the morning, the first thing I do the day before is call Jill and say, can I leave tomorrow morning? When can I actually leave? I don't really, to understand. So we're going to look at how we can kind of simplify that program and make a recommendation with regard to that. The current status of that is Kevin and Hardy are reviewing what we've talked about before on that, or where we stand with that at this point. And then for the next meeting, we've got a discussion about the new aircraft. It was brought to our attention that there's concern about not only just the rate that the aircraft is being charged at, but the fact that people are booking the aircraft and not flying it. Like booking it for 3 hours and then sitting on the ground for 2 hours doing ground and then going up in the airplane for 1 hour when other people are really eager to get into the aircraft. So we were asked to kind of discuss that and see if we could come up with some sort of idea for how that might be more equitable. So we'll see what, at this point, I don't know. It looks like you might have a question.
Do they get charged for the 3 hours?
They get charged when the aircraft is operational, so.
So the answer is no.
Well, it depends. So some of them are and some aren't. But that's the idea. It's a common problem with flight, with instructor and scheduling, not just here, but anywhere. But it's something we're looking at. We've been tracking that for a while. It flies a lot. So it's not a common problem, but it does happen. You know, a student decides he's not going to fly because the instructor thinks it's okay, but the student doesn't like the weather. There's different scenarios that happen, but this plane does a lot of instruction, and so we're looking at a few of those things.
It's an expensive plane. We'd like to get revenue.
It flies a lot.
It's
We're going to be
popular.
replacing the engine at the end of next year.
Yeah, well, yeah, he kind of is. I mean, some of the person that had brought it up to us originally, it was not even so much about that whether or not it's being whether it's generating revenue when it's on the ground. It was the frustration that it was on the ground when somebody else might be able to.
Sometimes we're dealing in half an hours, but the other issue is some instructors will book it until October at certain times, and that's one of the things and then their students fill in. And these are students that, you know, or locals that want to learn to fly, and so we're working through some of those things and making that more efficient.
Yeah, and when the program was kicked off, there was a use agreement between the airport and Sierra Aero, and then all the traditional kind of booking methods were used of the previous aircraft fleet, but we're coming to learn that obviously it's incredibly popular. Instructors want it, the students want it. It's really quiet, which is what we want. We want the most quiet plane flying the most hours. And it's a good problem to have. I think we've got a lot of solutions to solve it, and we're kind of about halfway through the solution set to deliver it to ACAT so they can look at all these different concepts.
And we're also looking at, we think we're in a position now where we could raise the rate for this aircraft and charge more for this one, and not have people select the noisier airplane. You know, they'll fly this one. We think that there's some other things after the first year that we've learned that we want to implement with it.
What is the noisier airplane?
That's Windsor Hotel. That's the other non-diesel trainer. So
That is owned by Sierra Aero?
yeah.
I thought they were mothballing that since they had.
Well, no, they had two. They mothballed one. So there's two training aircraft. So 68 Foxtrot no longer flies, and you have Windsor Hotel that is the round gauge aircraft, and then you've got ours, and we've made them the same price so that we didn't incentivize people to use the noisier airplane. After the first year, we've realized that the capabilities of this, we think we can actually raise the rate on that and still have it. It probably wouldn't fly any less.
David, on, sorry, if we go on?
Yeah.
On the real estate guide, what's the, for lack of a better word, the review and approval process of that?
What we're in the process right now of I wrote an original draft of like what I wanted to get covered in it, and then we're taking that right now and reworking it to make it fit into a smaller format, and then at that point in time we will take it to the real estate board and presumably to you. So that you can see it. You're welcome to if you want early access to any of the materials, works in progress, you're welcome to that as well. We're all about the input on it.
Yeah. I think my questions are coming up around, on the one hand, and we've been through previous versions of this with, not with something scoped in this way for real estate brokers, real estate agents, or new people, but when we were in other initiatives to communicate with the public about what could be the impact of the airport. And at the time, there was really a tension about overstating the noise and annoyance impact of the airport versus understating the impact of noise and annoyance in the airport. And so this is, I can't quite remember when we were doing all those community workshops, about maybe 4 years ago or so. And so in the workshop context, we were able to figure out how to, get some poster boards and stuff and communicate that. But really, that's my question. Like, what's the check and balance, if you will, the review and approval on, we're not overstating and, inadvertently potentially impact people's real estate values, but neither are we understating and soft selling what's going to be happening. So what's the process for this guide for that kind of review?
And I've shared that same concern because you do have folks that are highly impacted by the airport, and the last thing they want us doing is also going and saying your home may not be worth what you think it is because the airport's close by when they try and sell it. So and I know that ACAT's aware of that, and that's not the intent, but that could be a ripple effect of what we're doing, and so we just gotta, because the same people that we're trying to warn are the same people that may be affected by us saying, hey, there's an airport here. And then when they try and sell, they could be affected.
One of the concepts I had to mitigate some of that, or try and balance that whole balancing act, is using the comprehensive land use plan as a kind of a conceptual guide, because those concepts are outlined to a high degree from a data-driven perspective in that plan, which is actually adopted by the TAWA, the Airport Land Use Commission, which has nothing to do with the airport. So really my role is to give enough concrete data-driven analysis into the project so that the material we put out there really represents cohesively what the county, the TAWA, and the airport all feel are the right descriptor for the impact around the airport.
I think that's really a nice way to do it. It's a policy-driven document that's based on some data, and we're not really, trying to get the teeter-totter even, right?
Right. I mean, with the intention is definitely not to do anything that casts a shadow over real estate values or we're just trying to be transparent about the airport's impact, both positive and otherwise, on the community. Because if there's a situation where somebody is about to sign on a home and it's right under the departure path and there's extremely noise sensitive, PTSD, anything, we feel like that should be disclosed. And realtors tend to just disclose, you realize you're in an airport area without specifics about that. So for people that like myself, my home is out in Prosser and I'm not sensitive to aircraft noise. So when I was told about the fact that there was an airport nearby, I was like, that's the idea, you know, that's why I'm here, you know. So it's about that transparency so that people, when they're calling the noise office, or the fact that they know that there is a noise office, that they don't feel like they just made a horrible decision, you know, that they understand and not just that aspect, but the aspect of how they can participate in the board, how can they participate in ACAT, how they can get involved with everything the airport does and understand where to find out information about the airport, the events, the playground, the everything that the airport does. And the gist of it was just, as people come into the Truckee community, we want to go up and shake their hand. And we want their first impression of us to be a positive impression. These people are transparent, they're honest, they're not trying to hide anything. And so that later on, when you do hear that aircraft flying overhead, maybe in that context, you're like, yeah, I know there's an airport there. As opposed to that initial, like, what was that kind of thing. So this is our goal. We just want to make sure that nobody is horrified by this, and as you were saying, that we don't do anything that inadvertently has a ripple effect that's negative either on the reflection of the airport or on the reflection of the community.
I love the idea of what you're all talking about. I don't want it to be misconstrued. I think transparency about the fact that there's an airport here, that there are the zones, that you're going to hear planes more in some places than others. I really, really like that idea. Right. And I think I just want to say, I think you're understanding my question, and there's a really good answer for that, so thank you.
I am appalled that it's not covered under the real estate regs. I listed and I'm selling a condo in San Francisco, and I had to sign about 30 pages of disclosures. I can't believe it's not on disclosures, even with real estate people.
It is, but it's within 3 miles, but it's at the point that you're signing the papers to buy it. It's not like ahead of time, and I think that's your point, is trying to do it ahead of time.
Yeah, because as you're saying, I mean, at that point, it's like,
it's done.
You know, you're buying a car and they're throwing all this stuff in when you got to get in their car. We're just saying, like, it's not that we're discouraging anybody from coming to Truckee. We want people to come to Truckee. It's just that when they look at this, it might help them decide which neighborhoods are most suitable for them in Truckee. Mm-hmm. You know, or if they don't have an issue with the sound of aircraft flying overhead, then they're like, oh, okay, well, whatever, there's an airport here, which we know is probably the position of the majority of the people in Truckee. They notice the aircraft, but they're not irritated. Some people are irritated by it. So we just want to kind of just, like I said, we want to meet people when they're coming in here. We hope to better inform realtors in the area so that they actually can say something about this rather than just signing off the waiver that, you know, there's an airport nearby without knowing what that means. And as you said, by the time you get to that point,
yeah, you're done.
It's the ball's going.
So, thank you. Any other questions?
Nope,
Any
thanks.
questions? Sounds good. Some new and exciting stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, monthly financial report, Kelly. Any public comment? Any public comment on ACAT? No, okay. Thanks, Brent. Keeping it real. Okay, let's go on to the monthly financial report. Kelly.
This month, you'll notice there is no monthly financial report. I just want to give you a quick update on what's happening in the finance world. We are in the midst of our audit, our annual audit with James Marta, working through December year-end and all of 2019. So next month we'll have hopefully a draft audit for the next board meeting, and then also our January financials as well. Working through, I know we've spoken a little bit about it individually, but I'm working through trying to change up a bit of the way the P&L looks and what I'm going to provide to you for a financial report each month. So it's just a little doing to get it changed up.
Great.
Have a few sales highlights, just some fun facts for January, since I don't have the full financials for you. 100 low lead sales were 28,000 versus a budget of 39 and prior year of 39, so we're a little bit down from last year in budget. Jet fuel was 208,000 versus a budget of 156 and prior year of 146, so we're looking good ahead of last year in jet fuel sales. These are gross sales too, just to throw out there. And the total FBO, including hangars and everything all in, 511,000. Last year we were at 445, so starting the year off on the right foot.
Great.
And then just a couple of housekeeping items. I know we've talked about this earlier, but I just wanted to let you know we're live. We're down onto our 6th payroll now, or this will be our 6th payroll with ADP. Things are flowing well. If anyone has questions or needs help with pay statements or anything, let me know. You can access all that online, or there are paper ones in your box upstairs, and I can show you how to turn that off if you don't want it anymore. But you have to select it yourself, unfortunately. And then with our new bank account, thank you for signing, Jim and Lisa. Now we are ready to, next week we'll do our first AP run out of Wells Fargo, and I'm in the process of moving everything else now over to the Wells Fargo side. And then we'll be sunsetting Bank of the West. Any questions?
Any questions? Yep.
Do I need to do something there other than ignore all those emails?
No, you're good.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions, Lisa, Rick? Any public comment? Okay. Thank you, Kelly. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
And speaking up, making Rick happy, so. Okay, now tab 10, staff and board member conference attendance report.
I gave just a really quick review last month of the Aviation Issues Conference that Rick and I attended in Barstow, California. I think that's where it was. I'm trying to remember. It's a good community. I like Barstow. Yeah. No, it was a great conference again. It was in Maui. Full disclosure, it's there every year, but nothing against Barstow. I've been through there many times.
We're going to give Kevin 3 minutes.
I'm going to hit a couple highlights, but the thing that came out of that, I'm finding quite a few people are aware of the Real ID mandate that's coming, and quite a few people are not. And so I talked to Mark Lamb, and we're going to actually push out some information through our channels, just making sure our constituents are aware that now is the time to make sure your ID is Real ID compliant, or you're going to have a really hard time getting on an airplane in October, or you need a passport. And so that's coming. We'll be pushing some more information out about that. Talked a little bit last week about PFAS. We do not have a PFAS issue at this airport. PFAS is a chemical that's commonly found in firefighting foams. We don't have a training facility on our airport. We've actually not found PFAS in the groundwater around the airport. That's from our agencies that test the water around the airport. But it's something we're watching. We're watching that very, very closely. I met with Winsome. I can try to remember her last name, but she's one of the assistant directors of the airport of the FAA for the airports division, and we are seeing some very, very good energy around the FAA to push funding out faster. For the first time in my almost 10 years here, they're calling me saying, "When are you going to bid your projects?" And we're on the regular schedule that they've always put us on. But they want to issue grants, and they want to get stuff out there. So it's very likely that all of our Taxiway Alpha grant, the $4 million they gave us, is going to get built this summer. And so we're working towards that. And that was confirmed at the conference in one of the meetings I went to. They have what they call an AIP FAST program they're working on, how to get certain grants out a lot faster. Talked a lot about UAS vehicles. They're coming. And we need to, as a community, as a nation, we need to prepare for unmanned aerial systems that are coming. They're already delivering vital organs in San Diego from hospital to hospital with drones. All kinds of things are going on with this all over the United States, and it's something that's super important. I put in here that aviation education is still talked about. And I love that because it's something I think we can really affect here locally of getting the workforce of the future excited about aviation. And then the only other thing I'd mention on that, the third page of my report, which I actually shortened by 3 pages this year, I want you to know, is air traffic controllers. The National Air Traffic Controllers Association is trying to push some legislation so that retired federal controllers can go work at contract towers without having to give up their pension benefits. And so that's a problem for some of them that are retiring through the federal system, that they won't come work at our tower because they may lose pension benefits. So they're trying to get that fixed if they come to non-fed contract towers. So that's kind of what I took. There's more stuff, but that's all I'll share for right now. Rick, did you have anything else?
I just wanted to ask you, you had a bullet there that we fund 50% of the tower. What's the tower cost?
So it's 7 to 10 million. So I did put in there, in my meeting with the FAA meeting I went to, that the reauthorization in 2018 allows the small airports fund, which is about $500 million. Towers are now eligible. They weren't before. They're eligible, but it's fiercely competitive. But we, through a series of years of applying, we may be able to get 40 to 60% of a tower funded through that program. And so it's one thing that we're looking at.
And what is this noise liaison position? What are they going to do?
Yeah, so that's another interesting thing. So they funded, again, in reauthorization, the 2018 bill, they funded a noise liaison full-time person in each region. There's 7 regions. And so they're getting ready to put the first 3 in the offices, but they're primarily there to work with any constituent, any citizen that has questions about airplane noise. But their primary goal is to work on Metroplex issues, the Bay Area, Southern California, Phoenix. But they're also there to address any noise issue that if you call in and you're really concerned about noise and you call the FAA, they're going to send you to these liaisons that'll then help you understand what the federal resources are around aircraft noise and annoyance. I don't know she didn't know which 3 regions were getting the first 3 liaisons, but all 7 will have them here soon. Pretty sure there's 5 or 7 regions. I have to look at that, but.
Okay, anything else, Rick, you want to add, or?
No.
Okay, any questions? Jim, any public comment? Okay, thank you. And here we are, you've sat patiently, Steve.
Yes, thank you, Steve.
Action tab 11, the Ponderosa irrigation system.
Yeah, so this recommended action here is just to consider the request to help to replace the irrigation system at the Ponderosa Golf Course with the rec district. So we have an agreement that's in the packet that essentially commits the district to a $50,000 annual payment for 20 years to retire debt service on that. There's board consensus at the November board meeting that we include the funding and then bring an agreement back later for board consideration. So the current system is about 60 years old. It's about $1.2 million to replace it. The rec district did get a grant for $225,000 from the PUD. So there's the PUD, there would be us, and there'd be the rec district that would actually be putting funding into this system. Just as a quick reminder, we acquired the golf course in 2008. It is an airport district asset, and then we leased it to the rec district for $1 a year to operate and maintain for the benefit of our common constituents. And so that's really the request. All the information's in there. Mr. Randall is here, and he can answer any other questions that you have about that request.
Okay. Are there any questions? No questions, Jim? Rick?
I mean, I can say, right, we've had this multiple times before us in 2019, and Kevin summarized why we're here today in February with it. So, and the package is complete. So just to say why there's no questions, right? It's not,
right.
In my case, that I'm not paying attention. I am paying attention.
Good point. Rick?
No. I have a statement to make.
Okay.
Great.
First of all, I've talked to Teresa about this many times, and she is uncomfortable with it. She thinks that if we don't do it, they'll figure it out. I am in favor of doing because we own this property. And we want them to run the golf course, and I don't think we're qualified to run a golf course.
Maybe if you wanted to take some responsibility over there,
I am not qualified to run a golf course. And so I am in favor of this. I'd just like to make sure in the contract that the money, because there is a gap between what they're paying and what they're earning. I'd like to make sure all the money that is made at Ponderosa stays at Ponderosa. Nothing gets exported to other projects that you may control. It all stays at Ponderosa. That's what I'd like to see in the contract. Other than that, with that proviso, I am in favor of this.
Okay.
Is that done or easy to do?
Yeah, we can put that requirement in there easily.
And according to one of your directors, he's told me you have plenty of work to do out there you can use the money with if there is extra.
I mean, we try to operate on a break even. And any money we would be making would be going into capital. When we took the golf course over, all the equipment was also 30 years old as well. So we're trying to replace equipment, as available. So it's not a money-making proposition by any means. It's a community service.
I just want to have on the record, the reason that the Ponderosa Golf Course was purchased by the airport was because 51 homes were slated to be built there at the end of the runway. We did not want homes at the end of the runway. We also, we had a large contingent of aircraft operators, pilots coming in saying, please buy it so that in an emergency I can land there. So that was why it was purchased. It is a community asset and it is our property, and I can support this as well. But I just want the record to show those were the reasons why we purchased it.
And you had mentioned, I thought we could include that as a whereas in the agreement. You'd mentioned some interest in that at the last meeting, and we could put that in there.
Okay.
And this would be a much better place to have a plane land than some of those places that you have on that map.
Well, both. They all have advantages when you're in trouble. So in that case then, and no comments from up here, any public comment? Then let's
I move to approve the proposed funding agreement for irrigation system of the Ponderosa Golf Course with the Truckee Donner Recreations and Park District, subject to that one proviso.
Revenue requirement and an adjustment to the whereas to include the purpose for purchasing.
Right.
Those things.
And money that's made there stays there.
That's what I mean, the revenue.
That's my motion.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
Now you can go home. Unless you want to stay for the rest.
I love it that there's going to be a substantial reduction in the use of water, right? Increasing water efficiency as well.
Yes.
That's gonna be
That's a
good.
big
Any
deal.
other reasons, but that's also great.
All right. So tab 12,
Hope it was
Mountain
worth it.
Housing Council
3 hours.
2.0.
Yeah, so this request is a recommendation to continue our district partnership with the Mountain Housing Council for what they're calling MHC 2.0, which is to implement the next phase of the regional action plan. And the Mountain Housing Council, through the Community Foundation, is seeking a $55,000 per year commitment for 3 years. So in the packet, there's quite a bit of information on this. We can go through as much of it as you would like. It's essentially helping and committing funds to implement the next phase of their housing plan. And so I can give you many details, and Rick has some
This
with it. Or,
sometimes say, well, how many houses they built? Well, they don't build anything. They advocate, they convene. They've raised the level to where everybody is focusing on stuff, and I think they've done a good job. I'm sorry they lost Shauna to Doherty to the town of Truckee, because she was terrific. Now she'll be terrific for just the town of Truckee, but I support and I would like to continue this effort with the Mountain Housing Council at $55,000 a year for 3 years.
Is there any comments, questions? No? The only question I have is, we're also working with the JPA on housing for our employees, and how's that working along? I can't really talk about that, huh?
Here's the legal counsel for the housing JP right here.
I've been told I flunked retirement, which is true, so I'm just trying semi-retirement.
So it's moving along. I mean, we've had a meeting 2 weeks ago, and we're hired an executive director. We've hired an attorney, and we're getting all the documents created and recorded and everything that needs to be done, from everything from opening bank accounts to registering with the state, and that's moving.
Oh, great. Okay.
You've got a good ED person?
Yeah.
She's actually from the Mountain Housing.
Yeah, she was.
Was.
So she still does work for them. So we haven't got anything formalized with her yet, so I don't announce her name yet, but
okay.
It's coming.
Great. So
I do have one question.
Yes.
I'm sorry if you said this and I missed it. Was our previous commitment $50,000 a year for 10
Correct.
years?
Yes. She wanted a 10% increase.
Yeah.
Because they're doing a little different scope, which is in here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, no more questions, any public comment? Then,
I move to approve the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation request on behalf of the Mountain Housing Council to continue funding of MHC 2.0 program for 3 more years at $55,000 a year, based on the following findings, 1, 2, 3, which I'm not going to read.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
Perfect.
Okay, now we're on to
Right
goals,
along.
tab 13.
So every year, we try and present a goals statement for the year for board approval. This is something we, from a staff perspective, use to guide the work we do throughout the year. It's based on a lot of the information and work we do in the budget. There's some things that carry forward year to year that, goals that we just really like that we are proposing. And this is what senior staff and that we'd like to put forward to the board for 2020. We approved this last year in March. I wanted to get it here a little ahead of that in case you want to make some tweaks and look at it one more time. But this is what we were proposing for 2020 based on all of the meetings that we've had with you.
I just had, is this a good time for discussion?
Yep,
Sorry.
yep.
I just had a minor edit on I'm not sure which bullet it is. I think it's the 5th bullet about the agency partnership program. I think there's many ways we're looking at evaluating and improving.
Okay.
And so just to strike the clause, including considering a funding cycle. So just evaluate and improve the agency partnership program.
Okay.
I think there's lots of things we're looking at, and
Yeah,
let's
you're
look
right.
at all
You're
of
right.
them.
That's the next item, and
Exactly.
that's a good point.
Yeah, but I really like keeping the whole entirety of the goal, the idea of the goal.
On that same one, on projects with other public agencies, I mean, agencies is such a broad word, I want to be specific that it's other public agencies. And I don't know about nonprofits, because the way that we rewrote that, the nonprofits were not going to be funded. I mean, it was separate. And so I'm wondering, do we want nonprofits in there? I mean, I kind of think we should strike that, because...
We talked about striking that, but the will of the board was not to go that far.
Yeah, the last time we talked about it anyway.
But you're going to do this again.
Okay.
But I think we've got I think a good plan moving forward that we'll talk about on the next agenda item.
I guess prioritizing with
Yeah.
public agencies, that would be a higher priority
Okay.
for me. Jim, did you have any other? No? Rick?
No, thank you.
Okay. I would like to add one of the goals to this alternate runway orientation to, move it along, and then if, in fact, it's feasible to work, well, that would be a goal that would have to come back here. Wouldn't be getting it on the AIP unless we all wanted it, so.
Well, I don't want to put that on the goal. I'd like to hear what they have to say before this is too important, all of these, to put that one on until we get more feedback. That's my opinion.
That's fair, I guess. It's just one he can easily check off if we get through, that's your, okay. Find the implement and the other green initiatives, and part of being green, we're doing stuff on the airfield, but part of being green also is education. We're educating the public about aircraft noise and annoyance. We should also be educating the pilots about their carbon footprint. And some component of that in the lobby, in the website, something, so awareness, because green applies to everybody. And I would like to see that. Part of being green is also education of aircraft's carbon footprint.
I think that's an awesome idea.
Collateral piece coming out on that.
Pardon me?
We have a collateral piece that we just finished.
Oh,
that's
yeah?
coming out, so.
I think there's a severe lack of that in our aviation world.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a kiosk at the commercial airport for the commercial air traveler to go put in their stuff and offset their travel for a decade. And the average pilot is like, what, huh? Oh, you could do that? And doesn't know how to do it and doesn't take the time to think about it or figure it out. And we are so progressive here at this airport with so many things. I think it'd be great for us to spearhead that and just have a little tool on the website that said, hey, put in your aircraft model, put in what you do, whether it's one flight or your annual use. Here you can use our portal to offset your stuff. And maybe Mark Lamb would find out that a ton of people are coming to our website to offset their aircraft because we just have a good tool. Or maybe it's just simply the tools are out there and pilots don't know where they are and it links them to it,
but something.
I think it would help a lot of people who are upset about that carbon that's happening because of this airport, and be a really easy way for pilots to get rid of it. Well, to offset it. Let's be really clear about
So then
what the offset is.
With that goal, we would put, there are other green initiatives, but be more specific, I could add in with the pilot and user education program around. Yeah, I mean, I can't get too detailed with the goal, but I could have something in there that we would build off of that.
Pilot and
Aviation
passenger.
carbon offset program.
Okay.
And that's just a broad term. That's an easy box to check in this year.
I mean, it could be something where, people are buying stuff in the Amazon. Well, it's like people could buy cleaning up water ranch.
I don't doubt there'd be people that would do that here.
Yeah, but something,
I'll
start
put that in
thinking
there.
that way.
And I think-
And education.
I've talked to people about it before, and they're like, "I'd absolutely. How do I do it? Where do I do it right now? Show me." And it's hard to. Then you got to go and do a bunch of work to figure it out.
Research it.
Yeah.
Just to jump on the bandwagon also, I just heard on the news the other day that, totally different scale, right? But Delta Airlines is going to figure out how to be carbon neutral by 2030.
Wow.
Like that's
a big
so
bite.
awesome. And it's so
And their
really
stock
aggressive to do it in 10 years. So I think we're riding a little bit of a wave by doing that too.
Yeah.
People do want to learn.
Yeah, and I guess that my comment to riding the wave is let's not, Brad.
Okay.
We should be progressive.
Totally good.
We're so progressive with noise and
Totally good.
we're a lot of work this airport's done. We're sort of a real diamond in the rough, but this greenhouse gas emissions conversation, I think we have a lot of passion for it, but we haven't implemented much. That's something I think we could really lead the way with. And you might just go online and search it up and be like, oh, here it is. Here's
I've
the
seen
link.
things too. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think we would have, I think you'd have quite a few, I like the pilot thing because we would get some of those, but I think the users that are coming through the terminal
the
would also be
passengers
interested in
and
something like that. We do have some, like we tried the Green Bucks program 3 or 4 years ago, and the flight department's pushed back heavy on that, but because those people aren't authorized to make those kind of expenditures. But a lot of our private 91 operators, and then I think a lot of the users that are walking through would feel good about doing that when they just landed in their Challenger.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just on another note, I think on another note, there's continues to be an emphasis on safety, accidents, and injuries. So really glad and of course the goal would be there, but just want to highlight that it is there.
Yeah, and I think that our goal is 0 accidents and injuries. I think it's supposed to be and appropriate training, not opposite training.
Well, opposite,
Is that,
It's a new word that I hadn't learned. I had to look it up. So I had Stacy help me with this goal because she's our safety officer. And when you look up the definition of it, it kind of fits. So
what does it mean?
You know, now I'd have to go back and look.
Okay, it was like I hadn't seen that, and I thought,
It means appropriate. It's various different. When you do the synonyms of that, it's all different things around appropriate. I could put appropriate if it's confusing to people. So it means more than appropriate.
okay. The other thing that I'm thinking of is this wait list info, you know, and trying to get a better handle around that in terms of a goal. You know, are people, you know, and also in the idea of the recession, if it's coming, and, you know, all those kinds of things. I mean, because I sat down with Jill for 20 minutes, and in some ways, there's so many variables in there. And I would like some way to make it less random. There's an aspect of it that just seemed, well, there's this and this and this, and, you know, can we try and tie it up somehow in clarity?
We do internally rank the list through color coding, so that's something that we don't necessarily put out there, but we do weigh it ourselves internally, so we understand who is in possession of an aircraft, and we measure how many times the aircraft has been. So if somebody calls up and says, hey, I'm Hardy, I want to get a hangar, we look up their tail number and figure out their frequency, and then we kind of judge their need for a hangar based on their activity at our airport. That's one thing we do. The other piece is that some of the people have been on the list for quite some time and have been passed up, so we also use that as a ranking method. So when we go to place somebody in a hangar, we look at all these factors and figure it out. So not to say that we can't improve on that, but there are a lot of metrics behind the scenes that we use to qualify the list.
And I guess that's what I'd like at some point then, as a board meeting, some discussion on this wait list to explain to me how, or make it so it's out there in a more clear method, and
I think we could do that as part of the hangar, the T hangars, because we're already kind of analyzing that wait list.
Okay.
Rather than make it one of these 10 goals, I think we could give you a more detailed review of that as part of that study.
I just want more clarity about it, because, you know, it's like if I don't come to the airport very often, but I want a wait list, I mean, then I have a hangar that then is not being used by somebody who's using us frequently. And, you know, I mean, like you say, she tracks the tail numbers, and there's a ranking. I guess I want to see that and understand that, because that's who we want in the hangars, because it should be used. Then the last one is in terms of the budget. You know, I'm really happy with seeing how the revenues are broken out. And I would like some idea of, there's aeronautical expenses, there's non-aeronautical expenses, and then there's a lot of gray where we're mixed. And I would like us to work towards a budget that has, that, you know, it defines aeronautical, you know, what's non-aeronautical, what those expenses, how they can be tied, without getting into a full allocation in the gray areas. But some of it is pretty clear, like when you're doing, you know, pavement maintenance or grader lease, utility, airfield facility maintenance. Those are all tied to airfield maintenance. You know, those are all expenses tied to aeronautical expenses. And then, you know, in terms of, you know, ACAT, that would be a non-aeronautical expense. Or not. I mean, you know, it's like going through, it's how we're defining this. I would like us to think about that, because then we can look at revenues versus expenses. That's my thought as a goal. I don't know if...
I think it's hard to do.
Well, it's hard to do if you don't even try. And I'm saying we should start trying to do that, because we should really kind of have a clarity in terms of what our expenses are on the aeronautical side and what are our expenses in the community benefit side, and then we're more clear how we're spending our money.
And some of them could be argued either way.
Or they're half and half, or 30-70. But a lot of them are very much aeronautical.
Yeah, but you have suggested this before and we haven't pressed forward with it. But if anybody who can do it would be Kelly Wu.
That's right.
But she's not here to hear that from me.
Well, volunteering people for stuff when they're gone is the American way. That's what we do.
I talked to her for a bit the other day
Yeah.
after you and I talked,
Yeah.
and she kind of was thinking, she's pondering on thoughts of that.
It could totally be done, but there is a level of allocation there that we're gonna have to dive into. You're absolutely right that there are things, but even with pavement, it's not all airside. There's pavement that we have that does other things, the warehouses,
Right.
land side. So, for me to feel confident about the numbers, particularly if people are looking at those going, is property tax subsidizing aircraft that are using the airport, we would have to make sure it's a careful allocation of where our costs and our expenses are. And we've done that before, and I'm not saying we have to do a full AMCG 2009 allocation study again, but we could, there's some low-hanging fruit in that we could do that could help make that clearer. It could be a goal. We could make it listed in one of these goals in, a little bit here in a minute. We're going to talk about the budget workshop. When we start the budget for 2021, here this summer, that'd be a great time to, have this conversation about how we want to build the 2021 budget around some of these things. And we would start thinking about that now. We wouldn't wait till August to do that. But it's really up to you if you want to make that one of these, 10 goals that we have here, or have us mark that down as an important topic of conversation, either at our workshop, which I'm hoping we'll do in May, or at the budget workshop in August.
I think we should have a conversation about it. I think we should say, do we bring in enough revenue on the hangars to make money with hangars? How does our hangar revenue do, or is it all subsidized? Are the taxpayers paying for people to put their planes in hangars, or are the hangar tenants paying for part of the airport? And what part of the property tax dollars that we get should go to the airport,
Right.
Yeah.
to the hangars?
Yeah.
Or to our tower. I mean, that was property tax money, but I felt it was not only good for the airport.
That's what it's
but it was
for.
also good for our community.
I mean, it didn't, I don't think anyone intended, let's create a bunch of property tax dollars and direct them towards an airport so that they can build $50,000 overhangs at pocket parks. I don't think that was the original intent of directing those property tax dollars at the airport.
It's all pre-Prop 13 money, and philosophically things have, and it's grown to $7 million, and it's.
And we do a lot with it.
I know,
And
and
this
it,
is a
and,
fascinating
and it gets
discussion.
fed out to the community benefit, and I agree.
This is a
But that's-
fascinating discussion that, would be better served, agendized and discussed in full.
So I could definitely put this down as a workshop topic. Do you want it listed as a?
I would like to see it as a goal, because what gets written down gets done. And it's, it's like metrics.
I've already written it down, but.
Well, I'd like to see it as a goal. That's my opinion.
So
I don't know if you
one, to
have.
make it a goal, what, the other three of you, what would you like to do with that
What do
one?
you think, Lisa?
I'm willing for it to be a goal. I think you just raised a good point. I think you raised a good point about the information that it would help us understand about the airport, the fiscal side of the airport.
And what's the reason not to do it? I mean, it's just, other than it's a ton of work. But what?
To not make it a goal, or just not to do it at all?
Both.
Is that- Yeah.
Both.
It is a ton of work.
It is, it'll
Well,
be
let's
involved.
ask Kelly.
I have. It's a ton of work.
Well, I was just talking to her the other day, and she's thinking about it. And it didn't seem like it was a big floodgate.
Well, I talked to her before that and she thought it was.
Well,
Nanner.
Back
So-
in, I guess it was 2009, they had AMC
Yeah, that's the
do that
last
study.
allocation. Mary has it right now.
I've been looking at it again, and I don't know that we want to get into that level of detail, but I think we can there are things that are very specifically aeronautical, and there's things like the WAB that are specifically non-aeronautical. And there's costs associated with the WAB. There's costs associated, fuel and hangars.
Yeah, I think right, we know all that, right? We know all that. So I do really like the way Jim
Yeah, the way
started
he
to
fra-
frame it up for us, and the way
Yeah.
you framed it up for us. It gives us information about the different ways we're deploying different revenue streams. And it gives us another strategy and insight into what we're doing with the airport and decisions we're making.
I can make it a goal. I mean, if we're going to talk about it anyways at the budget, at a workshop or, in August, then I can craft. I think what I'll do is I'll redo this. I think I did this last year and then and I'll put it back on as a consent item for the next agenda so you can see the final one.
I would almost rephrase it to like, the goal should be to present to us the possibility of and what it would look like
Revenue
to do it. And
programming
then the board would make a little bit of a decision of, is this the path we want
Right.
to go down or not?
Right.
That's good.
And, okay.
Yeah, I support spending property tax money on the community.
Right. I think we're good. I think we got the sale. Let's move on.
And I support spending some of the property tax money on the airport. I'm just wanting us to be clear because we want to get the highest and best use of the money for the airport and for the community benefit. And if you don't know the money that's coming in, where it's going and how it's being allocated, then you can't do the highest and best use.
Mary, we understand. Let's move on, please.
And so then in terms of the doodle, are you going to send out a doodle for May?
Let's get to the GM report and that's listed there.
Okay.
Actually,
And is there public comment on the goals? Okay, seeing none, let's, we have policy instruction 311, agency partnerships, policy discussion and consideration of temporary hold.
So
Tab
this,
14.
yeah, this one, and this is more of it's a consensus item. I don't think I have this on as an action item. Let me look. Oh, it is an action item, so yeah, you can do either. So I don't know that the goal tonight is to get into a laborious debate about how to effectively implement this program. Essentially what I'm asking the board to do, and this was based off of some board comments at the January meeting, is we would like to put a temporary hold, and we've already talked to the 8 or 9 applicants that are in the queue that are expressing interest in our program, basically putting a hold and allowing staff to come back with, we think we've got some pretty good suggestions based on some other effectively run programs that we want to show you. And so we would come back, and the specific request at the last meeting is look at a cycle as one idea. There may be some others that we want to consider. And then also, Josh would like to update the memo on, that they've written, that BBK has written on gift of public funds and how we can implement this program. And he doesn't have any problem with what we're doing, but there's some things we can do to make it better and more clear. Obviously get public comment, and then the one thing I would like you to talk a little bit about is the plan of action for the 2019 applications that you've heard 4 of them. All of those started early in 2019, and we've heard those 4. And then what we want to do is in probably 3 months we'll come back with some policy revisions that we think will work really well for future applicants. So that's kind of what we're talking about tonight.
Okay, any questions, comments?
Well, this started by me listing, because I talked to Mark, all the things that were maybe in the pipeline. There was a lot of big money. And we talked about this and said, well, we ought to look at this and maybe we hold off and get them all in so we can make decisions instead of being first come, first serve, which has worked in the past, but the board in January was worried about it not working because there were so many. So I don't know if this works into a grant cycle, but it's pretty much sounds like that. Or you get them all together. The question is, you hold off people like the bike park who wants to get it done in order to wait 4 months to do this thing. There's issues like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see that as a strong issue.
You mean specifically the bike park?
Specifically that's...
Some of the other ones can wait, but he doesn't seem like he can.
He totally can.
Can?
Can.
Oh.
Yeah. Bike park's not going anywhere. We could just say no more money. We go into a terrible economy. Coronavirus takes over, and no more money. The bike park's still going to be great.
Right.
it's not life or death, but
It's just
it is a really good plan, ready to go with, that could be greatly benefited from airport dollars. I don't know, I'm afraid of creating policies that limit our ability to do good. I said that when we first talked about it. I totally understand the desire to come up with a policy, but is the policy just creating delays, and do we become not very nimble and not very able to do good? And I think we all walk out of some of these meetings where we have hard discussions and we talk about noise and annoyance and we battle over little things, and then we do a couple really good things and we're like, wow, I feel really good about what we did tonight at the Truckee Tahoe Airport, and I enjoy being here and being on this board because of that. And I think if we take that away, I wonder, I question, and I'm also interested in, from a staff perspective, I know Kevin's many times talked about how you like working on some of these projects, and the staff does a ton of work to do the due diligence on some of these things. But
Yeah.
you get a lot out of it too, because you know you're doing these great things for the community. And I'm not saying we're going to erase them and we're not going to do them anymore, but I do think that's what we're doing if we say, let's just have the Tahoe Fund do this. Or, just to pick
So
a name.
I'm totally agreeing with you. I just want to maybe make sure we on the board and the staff are having the same discussion this evening, just very narrowly this evening. As I understand it, the request from staff is that we consider only 4 applications that are active before us right now, and we consider no more applications until, based on your proposal, it would be June 2020. And what happens in the meantime, between now and June would be the earliest, is in the intervening months, we have the conversation you just started to say. But I think tonight, as I understand it, the decision is a request to put a pause on applications besides the 4 that are active.
We feel that's accurate.
Okay, so just so we can be all having the same conversation this evening.
And I also, I appreciate what Jim is saying, because we do like working on these programs. They're fun, they impact people's lives, and it's good positive work. The challenge that we're seeing is we're running out of, we've never had a problem where we didn't have enough money to address the applications that were coming before us. Well, what we're seeing, and it really happened in December and January, where we saw 8 or 9 applications, and when you add up all the requests these people have, it was over $1 million.
Yeah.
And then we as a staff have to kind of tell people, what do we tell people? It's kind of going through that whole phase of, there's $366,000, there's $1 million of requests. So we have some ideas, and we have some ways, and also talking with Josh and BBK, that we can recraft the program so that the applications that come in are very clearly related to what our mission and what we're trying to accomplish. One of those being is provide benefit to the community at large. All those things would stay in there, but we think there's some ways that we can make that work that are clearer and will help people understand what they should apply for and what they may need to look at another place to apply for. But that criteria is what you would have to approve. We want to bring some of those ideas back to you and go through it, because I think right now just leaving it open-ended is going to be hard, because you're going to have applications trickling in all year, but all the money that you've budgeted, even if you lose some money,
I need to, because I talked, Teresa had a very strong opinion on this. She wanted this actually moved up, before those other presentations.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to do that because we had people here, because I knew this would be a discussion. She does not like this first come, first serve, and she wants us to hold this and talk about it next month when she's here. Because right now it's kind of an even split in terms of how we approach
She doesn't even want this agenda. She would prefer us not to take action on, I'm talking about the agenda item before us.
On the agenda item before us.
So her request for us is to postpone this agenda item.
Yeah, because of the way that I can see how this is evolving. She wants to put some input into it.
I would accept that request, but I wouldn't necessarily move in that direction, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
I mean, you and I agree on this, so.
Yeah,
But
I don't want to misconstrue my comments and say that I'm against doing this.
Right,
I just wanted to make the comments.
okay.
So I definitely don't want the staff to have 19 proposals
Right.
to spend $7 million. As much as I sit here often and advocate that we think about spending dollars on the airport, I want to spend dollars in the community, but I don't want it to be unbridled and out of control. So I think we ultimately are moving in this direction. I just want to be very cautious how we do it and not just jump over the fence to like a.
So I guess what I'm hearing
Wrong
from this
program.
is that maybe this comes back with the ideas that BB&K is coming, or that's not what you're saying?
Well, I won't be able to have that next month.
I think we're I still don't, honestly,
I'm
I
trying to
still don't
figure
even
out
think
how
we're
to
even
read
having the
this.
same conversation.
Yeah, I kind of
I
agree.
really don't think we're having the same, you're asking for a hold on applications, and we keep talking about the program, right?
Well,
So we're not even.
Yeah,
necessarily
so
having-
essentially, from a staff level, we've kind of already done that, but we wanted to bring that before the board and make sure that's essentially okay. Because people are asking us to submit these applications.
And you're
beyond our
saying
ability to meet them.
we need to have you come back in June, and you're just trying to make sure we're okay with letting you do that.
With letting us bring you some new ideas and making sure the board knows that we're telling people.
Kevin,
about
really,
your
just,
applications.
what do you want? You have to say what you
I've
want
said it.
tonight.
That's what he's saying.
I've said it.
He
It's
wants
right
us-
here in the it's a hold, and let me bring stuff back.
And Mary, that's why I'm trying to say, like, I don't think we need to wait until the next meeting to do that unless you feel like Teresa was strongly telling you, no, I don't want to
No, I think you're right.
until
Yeah.
June.
No.
And no, I'd be really upset, which I think if all four of us think otherwise, then there's no point in waiting anyway.
The idea of putting it on hold, I think she would agree with. And then,
And then there's plenty of time for her to give comment.
I'm gonna do this. I move to place a temporary hold on policy instruction 311, agency partner program, to consider, I'm just gonna say, to consider new guidelines, I am modifying this, to consider new guidelines as well as receive advice and counsel from the district attorney regarding policy provisions in preparation for the May 2020 board discussion and possible action item.
I second it.
Question, does that mean we're not gonna talk about 4 things that have been sent in? I understand the word hold, but the 4 that we have in, are we gonna hold those until May?
Okay, so
Or
that's a
until
really
we-
good point.
Yeah,
So
that's the second
I'll
part.
modify the
The word new
motion.
in.
I'll modify the motion. Sorry.
Just add the word new and
Yeah, new, exactly. I'll modify the motion. I move to place a temporary hold on new agency partnership requests under policy instruction 311, et cetera.
That's the point I was, yeah.
Okay, is that good?
That's, yes. That helps with the first part of the question, that there's a hold. It's what, and then when you look at number 3 or 4, do you want me to bring back those 4 to consider?
No, well, that's not part of this.
Okay,
Let's do this.
I just need to know what you want to do.
Let's do this.
Use motion and a second?
and your second. Any other questions? All in favor? Oh, we
Aye.
have a public comment? I saw you out of the corner of the, any public comment? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion passes.
Okay, so now,
So now-
somebody else has to
I would
facilitate
like-
the conversation on the 4.
Can I elaborate on your question? Are you asking us to discuss right now, to a degree, how we make a plan of action to decide on those things that we, tonight in this meeting, made a new approach to how we do it? Come talk to us, we'll debate it, we'll talk about it, but we won't make a decision, we'll do it at another meeting.
Yeah.
And we've done that before, and then we haven't had a good process of how, at the other meeting, we do it. Do we just make it a consent item, which makes it actually almost, it just makes it a little weird in my mind, because we don't end up talking about it, or do I right now decide which one of the 5 board members I want to have a conversation with about each item, but not have it with 2 people, so I don't break the Brown Act?
Yeah, that's.
I just
the-
like in an awkward
It is
place,
awkward.
delaying it to another meeting. So if you're asking, how do we want to set up those 4? I'd say I want to put them on the agenda to have a conversation about it the next meeting.
March.
That's what I'm saying. So the current PI 311 says you hear the presentation, the next meeting we agendize it for you to have a conversation about funding. So right now you have those four, they're all from 2019. We would put it on for the March agenda item, and, you know, staff, we kind of already have our recommendations on those. And then you have a conversation, the applicants are here, and then you decide what you want to fund.
And the four are the CAT proposal,
Yep.
the MAP proposal,
The Biking for a Better World. And
Biking for
and
a Better World, and
North Star
North Star
CSD.
Fire.
right.
What was the
Thank you.
first one?
The CAT and
There's a pocket park.
Rec Park
And
District.
the shade structure that Alexis talked about, biking. And in January, we heard a proposal
the
from
North Star CSD.
North Star for
They
a
It's not North Star, it's North Star CSD.
Yes, it is, North
North Star CSD, the fire department.
It's not
No,
the ski
Fire
resort.
department
Okay.
is under the CSD.
Right.
Get to the
And-
punchline. What did you hear about?
Okay, so they wanted 49,995 at the write-ups in the January for a,
Really, I think
you can
We're
read.
gonna have all that for you next
But
month.
it's 50,000 there, 125 for the park next to the old rec center in Truckee, 50,000 for the
75
map,
for the other.
and 75 for Biking for a Better World. It adds up to 300,000.
And I would
And the budget is
keep this, it's
Exactly.
information, but no
no
discussion.
action. No, but that's what we're
And
talking.
no discussion either.
Right, 300,000 on 366 is
So
the
the
budget.
question Kevin's asking us is, when do we want to make a decision on those? And one proposal on the table is March.
I'm in concurrence with March.
Yeah.
But I have a slight nuance that comes out of my housing report. Because things are going nowhere in Truckee. Rich Lee made his proposal to them in December of 2018, and they haven't even picked up his application, so we're not going to spend any money on him. And then last Monday, we had a meeting with Supervisor Cindy Gustafson, Shauna Purvines. This is my
Brent's
housing
starting to
report,
get,
Brent.
his hair's starting to stand up.
This is
you
my,
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking it was maybe the board member announcements.
No, it's the housing report under the GM report. And so what is happening on this is Cindy and the county staff is taking over the project from the developer. And they are going to come up with a proposal and do the environmental and traffic work and the trip report, which is now required by the state, not just intersection level report. And they're going to look at a totally different thing. They're going to look at the.
What, could I just, why
Yeah.
are we talking about
Well,
this right now?
there is another.
Money.
I'm going to give up housing money that's in the budget and put it into partnerships. I'm going to recommend that.
When are we going to consider the 4 projects?
When do you want to consider it?
I don't, honestly, I don't care.
I mean, next month.
March.
March. We have them ready for March.
I'm
And
only
you
asking
can get
because
those
I'm a
done.
little on the fence.
I'm a little on the fence too.
You know, and
But
it's,
okay, so March.
Yeah.
Now, I do think, given the strong reservation that Teresa voiced about that, one of us, or Kevin, it's probably more appropriate for Kevin, you're gonna have to communicate carefully to her that both decisions we made tonight.
Yeah.
Right? It's confusing. There is
It
a
is, but
hold
we-
which she wanted, and there,
Yeah.
yet 4 things are gonna show up in March.
Yeah.
It's gonna be confusing.
I mean, do we not want it in March? Do we want it in June? At the same time we're talking the policy? I mean, if we're,
I'm for March.
I think, I mean, I don't know. I'm just on the fence with it because
Yeah.
there's things about it that I think, wow, we could do some great things in March. We can give some great groups some money. And then there's some other things that are in there that I'm like, I'm not sure we're vetting this out as well as we should.
Right.
At this point, we're running out of, to be blunt, I think we're running out of money. I mean, you're starting to talk about, well, we can take money from here to over there. We never used to do that. We used to just say, look, we got this massive reserve, we should do this. And if that's the new paradigm we're in, we need to start working harder to figure out where we're spending our
Anytime
money.
anytime we make a change, anytime any kind of policy program that exists and there's a change, there's an awkward period. We're in an awkward period. So I think we're adults, we can deal.
See, and I don't think the scientific way we divided up $1 million, a third and a third and a third, to housing, to partnerships, and to transit was that scientific. And what I was trying to do was suggest that we move 134,000 to take it up to $500,000 out of housing.
I know
in
what you're
partnership.
saying. That would be a good discussion once
Not for
it's
tonight.
agendized.
Right. But what I'm getting at is, are we gonna make a decision on the 4 in March, or are we moving it to June or May when we're gonna be talking the policy?
I propose the 4 that are active, that we've heard presentations on,
We deal with
per
it
the
in March.
current policy. It's per the current policy, which
They
is in
apply to
place.
We do it in March.
We do it in March. We honor the work that the staff and those applicants have done under the current policy.
I think that's probably the right way to
That's
do it.
right, okay.
That's what I would agree with that.
Yeah, okay.
So
That's
is that the consensus of the group? I don't know that you need
the
a motion. but-
consensus.
It's worth it.
Okay, there's strong consensus there. All right. I
Okay,
can,
any public comment?
Gnarly, crappy process.
Oh, yeah.
okay. Anything else on that one? All right.
That's it. Now, general managers.
Yes, so just a couple things here. We've already talked about this other stuff. You see the training opportunities, but we would like to move the July 22nd board meeting to July 29th. That'll accommodate some staff training and other things. If there's 5 Wednesdays, hoping that would work for everyone.
I love it.
So 22nd to the 29th, everyone okay? And then I also just put a little paragraph in there. I wanted to make sure that,
I'm sorry, actually, for regular meetings, you need a motion to,
We move the July meeting by a week, but you really ought to check with Teresa on that and make sure she's available.
I'll check with her. I'll make sure
Okay,
it works.
but we move it to the 29th.
Second.
All in, public comment? Any other board comment? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No?
No, that's good, thanks. Then the other item I had that I thought was important was I'm getting ready to sign an architectural agreement for the admin building expansion. In the budget, the board approved $550,000 to get the design and bidding done and bring it back. You still have an off-ramp, but we'll be bringing that back to you this summer, and the board will make a decision if they want to add on to this building. It would include, in phases, it would also include the restaurant and the kitchen. That's all coming. And before I sign that contract, I want to make sure everyone knows that that's what we put in the budget, and they're going to be moving forward with that design. And so, is everyone okay with that? Is that everyone's recollection of what the budget workshop and what was approved in the budget? That's what I
How
have
much
down.
is the design part of that?
That's like $170,000 for the final design and engineering on the admin building expansion. It also includes a new meeting room.
That's aviation or non-aviation?
Well, it's primarily staff offices.
Is that aviation or non-aviation?
You tell me.
Question.
I would call it both.
See, this
Because
is
we have
the problem.
Staff that does both. Actually, the name of our department is literally
Aviation and Community Services, it's both.
We have to change that.
So, it's, from a staff perspective, it's not a flagged item. We were moving forward with it, but I just wanted to make sure there was clarity that you're gonna get presented
Thank you.
a full, okay. Everyone got it?
I do think we had it was a little bit of muttering when it came up last year and stuff, but, so I think it's good to clarify and agree.
Yeah. Perfect, okay. We provided an update on the land management plan. There's opportunities for input if anybody wants to give that, and we've put some details in here that Hardy put together. And if you have any questions on that, we're happy to take any. I won't go through it in detail, but we're moving that along. It's our impression that, just like we did the one prior, that we will bring you staff's recommendations. There'll be a presentation on it. Tweaks and modifications can happen before it's finally approved, but this includes, we used to call it the forest management plan. It's now lands management. Any questions on that one? And then I did have down here that we'd like to do a board workshop. Last year, remember, we went through a bunch of different iterations of different dates. We're looking at May. We'll probably do some doodles and see if we can find a a day that would work. We thought about doing it before the May board meeting. We could meet for 2 or 3 hours before that May board meeting, or we can find a different date. Remember last year, we did it the Friday of the air show week, which was, it worked, but it was not our favorite week to do that. So I assume there's interest in a workshop, and then around that time frame, we'll start sending out dates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sending out doodle and what people want to talk about.
And then we'll plan on our budget workshop. That seems to be working, that August, before the August board meeting, do our first budget workshop.
I'll probably send the doodle like soon, just because
Yeah.
last year was nightmare.
Tie it in.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
And it won't be any different this year.
Well, I'm positivity.
That's okay. I mean, everyone's busy. And then rolling agenda, any questions on that? Kind of trying to lay out kind of what's coming. There's quite a few things coming in the next few months. So.
Okay.
That's it.
Do you want to hear what's going on with Dollar Creek Crossing in Tejas? I tried to do that before, but I was told to shut up.
No, we went to, it was just out of order, so.
I understand that.
I mean, can we just abbreviate it and say nothing?
No, the county's taking it over and doing a plan for a low-income section, a market rate apartment section, perhaps leased by the JPA, and they're even looking at a co-housing section on all that property. So there's a new focus not being run by the developer.
Interesting. Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Any other questions by the board? Any public comment? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to,
I move we adjourn.
there a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all. There's a lot on that agenda. Appreciate your extra patience tonight.
Teresa wanted me to tell you that she watched the whole meeting.
Did she?
Yeah.
She said she was going to.
She did.
And did she say